Well, hey, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Collier, and I chair the Chattanooga-Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission, and wanted to go over a couple things before we get started. On the slides, I think, Brian, does it still kind of walk people through the procedures of the meeting? I'll just cover the highlights. So the Planning Commission has gotten this packet with all the cases in the mail a little over a week ago, and Planning Commission's had the opportunity to review these cases. And so as we go through the agenda, which I hope you have there in front of you, I'll read the case number, and in each case, I'll ask if there's any opposition present. I'll also ask if the applicant is present. If there's no opposition and it's a staff recommendation to approve, the Planning Commission will likely take action on that case without having heard from the applicant or anybody else or staff. So we'll often take action on those cases without hearing a staff presentation. Just to clarify, throughout the agenda, I'll say, is there any opposition present? And sometimes somebody doesn't realize that they need to raise their hand because they maybe just have some questions about the case or they have some concerns and they're not necessarily opposed to the request that the applicant has made. If that's you and you want to say anything in regards to the case, your only opportunity to speak will be if you raise your hand when I ask if there's opposition in regards to that specific case. So make sure to follow along closely in the agenda. At that time, what will happen is we'll first hear from the staff, and then we'll hear from the applicant. The applicant will get up, and if you don't mind, just for the sake of moving through the agenda as quickly as possible, if you're the applicant and we're listening to the staff, go ahead and get out of your chair and make your way to the podium. Make sure this red light's on so that we can hear you. State your name and address for the record, and you'll have 7 minutes to present your case. And then take a seat right there in the front row somewhere. And while the applicant's speaking, if you're here in opposition, go ahead and get out of your chair. Don't sit in your chair. You got to get out of your chair and you got to line up on my left, the right side of the room, right behind that podium, so that I can see that there's maybe 2 people or maybe 12 people that want to speak in opposition. Opposition will have a total of 9 minutes to respond to what the applicant has said in the staff report. And then after opposition gets done, we'll hear from the applicant for 2 more minutes. As a couple other things before we get into the agenda, all the conversation that takes place today will be between the person at the podium, at the mic, and the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission may at times direct questions to the applicant or the opposition, but just please keep in mind that that's the order of today's meeting. It is a conversation between the Planning Commission and staff, or Planning Commission and the person at the podium. If you're in the public and you wish to speak, the only time to speak is while you're asked to speak in opposition to a case and you're at the podium. I think that covers it. I will also say that in almost all of these cases, what we do today here at Planning Commission is make a recommendation to either City Council or the County Commission. And I think we have distributed a little flyer, Brian, with those follow-up dates.
Maybe all ran out, I'm not sure. But
Okay.
yes, you can go on our website or contact us. It's usually the following month.
Right.
We'll just go with the City Council or County Commission, depending on where it's located.
That's right. So what happens is, we meet the second Monday of the month, and City Council will hear these cases the second Tuesday of next month, and County Commission, I'm not sure what date.
Second Wednesday of the following month.
Right.
And then the full-blown County Commission will be the third Wednesday. So
Yeah.
the county meets twice.
Okay. All right. Before we get started, I also want to try to figure out why there's so many of you here.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Just a clarification. The County Commission's Planning Committee meets the second. The full commission votes the third
Okay.
week of the month.
So does the public have an opportunity to speak?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and read off some case numbers just to try to get a sense of normally we don't have this many people here. So I'm supposing we can figure out why and maybe adjust the agenda. If not, we'll just stick with the agenda we have. If you're here in regards to case item 3 under new business, case 2022-0040, located at 1488 and 1508 Boy Scout Road, can you raise your hand? Okay. And if you're here in regards to case item 16 on the agenda, 2022-0057, located at 1115 North Moore Road. Can you raise your hand? Okay. And if you're here in regards to item 20 on the agenda, 1702 Shepherd Road, can you raise your hand? Okay, guess that one wrong. So I'm 2 for 2. All right. So we are going to move 16, item 16 on the agenda, Brian. We're going to move that to right after. We'll move item 3 and item 16 to the top of the agenda in order. Sorry. And then 1, 2, 4, so on and so forth. Councilman Ledford.
Mr. Chairman, do you have a withdrawal request for item 20?
My understanding is that the
I saw-
applicant has withdrawn that.
That
Case
is
20.
true. Case 20, which is 2022-61, we did receive a withdrawal request prior to the deadline date of last Wednesday. Signs were placed on the property and has been officially withdrawn, even though it's on your agenda. It was after the agenda was sent out.
So we
Okay.
don't need, we do not need to take action.
Right. So just to clarify for everybody here, item 20 on the agenda, which is case 2022-0061 at 1702 Shepherd Road. If you're here, that case has been withdrawn and the applicant has to withdraw it, so we're not going to take any action on it today. So, all right. Top of the agenda, we've got subdivision plats and variances. First item is under preliminary plats. It's SD 2022-0005, and this is lots 1 through 18 at 6855 Sawyer Road, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is SD 2022-0006, and this is Black Creek Phase 14, lots 1401 through 1448, 97 and 99 at Zero Fringe Road, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. I don't know why that would be. Can you turn up the volume?
Emily's trying.
All right. So in the meantime, if you're not me, if your
Is that
name's
better?
Ethan, talk. If your name's not Ethan, don't say anything, so that everybody can hear. We have a motion made and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is SD 2022-0009, and this is the Riverton plat revision located at 1100 Lupton Drive, and has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Mr.
We
Schultz?
do. Mr. Chair, I need to explain this plat a little bit. This plat was submitted last year as a preliminary plat and was approved as such, as shown on the screen. And on that plat, which I've highlighted in the red circles, if you will, that plat showed a 60-foot water quality buffer. The applicant, basically to the south along the river, they're seeking a variance to that 60-foot water quality buffer. And Stormwater Department and Land Development Office wanted to make sure the intent behind the approval last year by Planning Commission was not to maintain that 60-foot water quality buffer. So the applicant is before you today to have that water quality buffer removed and then go seek the variance. If that variance is denied, they'll have to come back in and show the 60-foot buffer. But as it was shown last year, water quality or stormwater doesn't want to override the planning commission's thought or intentions behind approving a 60-foot water quality buffer along the south. So I
Okay.
think that's covered what the applicant's asking for today. Is what was the intent behind planning commission approval on plat approval last year?
But I mean, it's not, the question isn't what was the intent. The question is, do we want to approve a modified condition or not?
Yes. Do you want to basically remove that buffer as shown
Gotcha.
on a plat from last year?
Okay. Is there any opposition present? Does the commission want to hear from the applicant, or is there? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, was that with condition that's noted in the staff report?
Yeah, I understood your motion to be this.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is SD 2022-0007. And this is located at 8634 Bloomsbury Trail. And it's a variance from Article 402.1, required access for residential lots. And it has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Do you have any concern with the conditions? What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve with conditions, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is SD 2022-0008. It's located at 1305 Northgate Circle, and it's a variance to the Chattanooga zoning regulations on the required side yard setback, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. First item under old business is case 2021-0219. And this is located at 6340 Middle Valley Road, and two unaddressed parcels on Middle Valley Road. And it's in the city of Chattanooga, and it's a lift conditions ordinance. And the staff recommendation is to amend condition number 1 and lift condition number 2 of the ordinance. Is there any opposition present? Okay. And is the applicant present? Thank you. Mr. Schultz, take us back through this if you could.
Sure. And there also was a petition submitted, just for the record, on this case as well. This case is, I think, originally submitted back in December. It's been deferred several times. But this is a request. It's not a rezoning. It's already zoned RT1 with conditions. So this is a request to lift the conditions, but specifically conditions number 1 and 2 of ordinance 13607. Those two conditions are on the screen. Condition number 1, maximum of 4 dwelling units per acre. And condition number 2, townhome uses allowed on parcel 91-8401 only, which is highlighted on the screen in blue. The way that condition is worded, it's not clear on parcel 82, which is the brown area below, if you can do anything in terms of development on those parcels, the way that condition is worded. This case came originally for the rezoning back in 2020. Staff recommended to approve with 2 conditions: maximum of 4 dwelling units per acre, and townhome uses allowed only on parcel 91-08401. Planning Commission recommended to approve with 1 condition: maximum of 12 dwelling units per acre. When it was in front of City Council disagreed and agreed with the recommendation coming out of staff, which was Two conditions, again, max of 4 dwelling units per acre. Townhome use is allowed only on parcel 91-84.01. Based on that site plan submitted in 2020, there was 2 acres, 12 units, a density of 6 dwelling units per acre. So this is the property. It's located at 6340 Middle Valley Road, just to the south of Shelby Circle on Lower Mill. Another view of the site. This is a view of the north of the site along Shelby Circle, which are townhomes. This is a view of adjacent single-family dwellings. Again, this is in the Hickson North River Community Plan, which was adopted in 2005. The plan recommendation was for low-density residential, and that's where staff came up with the density number. It was based on that plan recommendation. So again, before you today is lifting and amending conditions. Staff looked at this. We get to the right condition here. Proposed single-family attached residential, which is townhomes, is a housing type. It is compatible with the recommended land use plan recommendations, which is identified in Hickson North River Community Plan. It meets the goal of providing various housing options. It is compatible with adjacent land uses and development form. So staff recommended to approve amending condition number 1 to change that to a maximum density to 5.5 dwelling units per acre instead of 4, and approve lifting condition number 2. That way, those adjoining parcels to the south could be developed with some type of housing option under the RT1 zone. So staff recommended to approve amending condition number 1 and lifting condition number 2. I do have in front of me some, this came from a association meeting with homeowners. There are 4 conditions I think they are suggesting to be added. And I'll read those for the record. No curb cuts to adjoining parcels. Limit the development to 1.5 stories or lower in height. The 3 units in the cul-de-sac are limited to single unit type residential homes, and a site plan must be submitted. So with that, there's 4 additional conditions that the homeowner association through a meeting would like to have added to this request.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I have one question, well, maybe 2. The plan that we have here in front of us, this plan?
Yes, on the screen, that's what the proposal is today.
Okay, and so would the 5.5 units per acre work with that plan?
Yes, that's what it's based on.
Okay. And then of those community input conditions, do any of those jump out to you as unenforceable or problematic for LDO?
I'm not seeing any. The only thing that's I would probably word it a little differently, is the 3 houses in the cul-de-sac should be limited to single unit. We need to describe that a little better. I don't know if we use cul-de-sac or probably use parcel numbers. Basically, type that down a little bit to make sure that those 3 that are in the cul-de-sac here should be single-family uses only. So we'll just have to wordsmith that condition of where those are. No curb cuts adjoining parcels. The staff sees any other concerns. I don't see any. Limit the development to 1.5 stories or lower in height. Right now, you do 2.5 stories at 35 feet. This is restricted than the current zone would allow. Site plan must be submitted. I'm not sure who that must be submitted to. Is that LDO prior to building permits? I'm not sure when and where that's being submitted and to who.
Okay. And then I do have one other question. So it makes reference of the site plan. I'm assuming that's this plan?
That site plan on the screen is what was submitted as part of the zoning application. I'm not sure if something different was submitted at a neighborhood meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that. What's on record is the one that's on the screen, what you have in your packet.
Mm-hmm. I think it's the same. Okay. The applicant's present. Can you come on up? Did you have a question?
I'm looking at Councilman Ledford. He was.
Councilman Ledford?
Chairman, thank you. Brian, I would think the site plan to be submitted would be attached to it at council, would be the intent of that.
Okay.
And have it part of, we can't do that here, obviously, so we would have to do that at council.
I just want to speak to that, if I may, real quick. I don't know that that's a good condition for us to put on this, because, I mean, we approve, and I mean, or even for city council, to attach. I mean, and it's not mine, but we approve stuff all the time where we're looking at site plans that can't actually be built. And this site plan, I mean, it's just my opinion, can't be built. I mean, that's a city road, the way that it's RTZ's 1 unit per lot. So that makes that a city road that would have to come in, which will have all sorts of problems associated with it. And then, I mean, there's all sorts of things that wouldn't work about this if what we're doing is tying the zoning to a plan that hasn't been properly preliminary platted. This isn't a preliminary plat. This hasn't been signed off by the city of Chattanooga. So.
Right. That's more simply a sketch rendering for our review. I will say in the past, years ago, council would condition to site plan, which you're right, did cause, if you changed or tweaked something on that site plan, that meant it was different and had to go back through the whole 3-month process of lifting that condition.
Yeah.
For the record, I agree with you, Chair. We
Okay.
should not be doing the site plan at this level. That would be a city council action, and we do it quite regularly, to Brian's point, to make sure that it doesn't, it stays true, and if there's any kind of major modification, that it stays true to LDO.
Thank you.
The only thing I was going to say, you recognize me, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair, is
Commissioner
that I have attended 2 community meetings there, and the conversation has been about this being a private road of some sort. So I think it's going to help me and others, I think, to hear the applicant, and so we can move on. But
Go ahead.
I mean, we'll make it a private road if you want to make it a private road. I mean,
well, that's what I heard in y'all's meeting.
Yeah. right.
Well, we're not here really to discuss whether or not it's a private road or a public
Yeah.
road. We're here to discuss these conditions that you're requesting be changed. So do you want to speak to those?
I mean, we're good with those. I mean, the conditions that they put, no joining, no curb, limit to 1.5, the 3 houses in the back, we're good with every bit of that. So, you know, if we can't, from my understanding, we're approved to build right now on that one parcel of those 8 townhouses. So, you know, we're just asking to build those 3 houses in the back.
Anything else?
That's all I've got.
Okay.
I think you're also asking to increase the density from 4 units to 5.5 units per acre. Is that right? That's one of the conditions that you're lifting or
We're
requesting.
going to build a total of 11. 8 townhouses and 3 houses. I'm new to this. I've got kind of thrown in. The person in charge of it is out of town, but that's all we're asking. And we pretty much got approval from everybody that lives behind it, except for a couple from my understanding. So I'm not asking.
Yeah. So in full disclosure, I live in Valley Brook. So these are my neighbors, and many of the neighbors out here that support it are also my neighbors. In previous roles, though, I'm very familiar with the flooding issues that are particular to this area, this very specific area. And I think the increased density, the density limit that was put on it was put on for a purpose only 1.5 years ago. And increasing those density limits with another plan and having gone through the entire process again, with this being deferred now 3 times, and then all of the adjacent property owners, have petitioned 2 times now for the density limit to be implied. So I think they're good with the development. It's the density limits because of the known flooding issues. And I get it, valley and brook are a term that go together that indicate flooding is highly likely. But having served in a public works capacity, and before I lived there, having dealt with this, and then having neighbors who are also here, want quality development, but also want to protect their own property, is probably the primary concern, which, 16, 18 months later, it coming back, just creates a little bit of trust issue amongst those adjoining neighbors who petitioned previously and coming back again. None of them being represented here. And I've spoken to only one of the petitioners today who said they speak through their petition to the commission in their attendance.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll hear from the opposition, and then you'll have the opportunity to respond. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. Chair. Brian, the petition that's before us, I see some dates going back to November. Are these accurate after the community meeting that was held? Was it last week?
It was 2 Sundays ago.
2 Sundays ago.
We had the community meeting, and that was the second. It was prior to the previous RPA meeting. We had another meeting, I think sometime in December.
So my question,
Mr. Allen can answer that. He was at both of them.
so my question is what we're seeing it as provided as a document are all these names still accurate in opposition? Given
We
those
don't,
2 meetings?
there's no way for us to check. That was submitted
This is
before
what was submitted.
the
before.
meeting.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Allen. I live at 306, attorney for the Ballard Homeowners Association. Staff has already read the additional conditions that the homeowners would like placed on this project. We agree with all of them. I'm not speaking for the applicant, but I don't know that going from 8 to 11 parcels or pieces of property is going to adversely affect stormwater drainage. And of course, that's apples with oranges to begin with. We've got to get over zoning before engineering comes in. And at the last meeting we had, Councilman Martin was there and Commissioner Kent Smith was there, and they were both very active in the meeting. And I think it was Councilman Smith pointed out that before this project can even go forward, there's going to have to be an engineering study. And if the study shows that some potential increased drainage or runoff might be in place, that there may have to be a retention pond put in there, and they may actually have to lose some of this property, maybe one of these single family homes. And the applicant was fine with that. So we are good with this. We do want these conditions on there. We did find out just a minute ago, there's been another petition just filed this morning, similar to the last time, the morning of the last meeting. It's a little troublesome that a supposedly identical petition would be filed just the morning of this meeting when they've had 30 days to do so again. But that's neither here nor there. Clearly, the vast consensus of the homeowners in our association are for this project. We know this is going to be a high quality project, and we don't know what it might be otherwise. So we respectfully request the commission to approve this with the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Martin.
I would like to add to the conditions that have been mentioned that Mr. Schultz mentioned a moment ago, except for number 4, the site plan must be submitted. I think it's probably more appropriate to let that be something that's handled through city council instead of here at the RPA. And so I have met with the neighbors out there on 2 occasions, fielded a lot of phone calls and emails. And I think that this is something we need to move this on past this body, move it to city council, let them deal with that and let them deal with the issue of the site plan. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve these 3 conditions.
Go ahead. We do have a motion.
To the applicant, can we make a clarification, Brian, to the 3 units that are in the cul-de-sac to the single-family dwelling, rather than saying that they're in the cul-de-sac as a single-family dwelling, given that you may be forced to create some kind of retention or detention. Can we reframe that 3 units to 8 units a little bit differently? In other words, 1.5 units per acre would have to be a single-family dwelling. If these are 2 parcels, right, Brian?
So you're talking about these 3 here.
Yeah.
are you wanting to state these are single family only and or detention/retention lots? Or if I'm following you, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, just
That way
rather
you're not
than-
limited to single family.
rather than pushing three single family units and creating higher density with the stormwater issues that may come on. So I'm trying to track how you would actually say that, Brian. 1.5 of the one.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure I'm following.
So I think that higher quality development is impressive for the property. That's what attracts the homeowners association to follow along. I think they also, I'm trying to ensure that those high quality developments are what actually get approved rather than just the town-owned construction.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond to that?
Commissioner Martin.
And help me, Mr. Chairman and Brian, isn't that what will happen when it goes to city council and they have to talk about the site plan? Isn't that where that assurance will take place?
I think so. I think the challenge that is being pointed out and, what happens in city council is entirely out of our control, but based on what Councilman Ledford has said, they would likely approve a plan that looks a lot like this, right? And that plan doesn't have any engineering associated with it. And so this plan doesn't show any detention facilities. It doesn't show a proper road, whether it's private or public. It doesn't show lots that would be legally conforming lots. I mean, there's all sorts of problems with the site plan. And I think what you're trying to prevent is it going to city council and have a condition that they be single family and then it can't be done, right?
So I think if it's simply stated, at least 3 of the units are single family dwelling, that's simple. That's a much simpler statement.
Could you not-
Regardless of location, but just 3. So I think I'm following you, like 8 townhomes, 3 single family for the entire development, regardless of the location on the site, something like that.
Yeah.
Or whatever his number of units are shown. I
We
think
do
he's
have a
showing 8.
motion and your motion was seconded by YL. Do you want to amend that motion?
I think that's a great, we're on the same page. We're trying to get to the same place. So I don't have a problem with amending it in that regard.
Mr. Chairman, I think I may have missed it. We need to get the applicant's or the spokesperson's name and address. I don't know that was.
It's Jesse Graham.
Oh, so you are the applicant?
Yeah.
I misunderstood. I thought you said you were not the applicant. Sorry.
I'm not the applicant speaking today.
All right, we have a motion and YL, did you second that amended motion as well? Thank you. We have a motion and it has been amended and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. All right, next case on the agenda, modified agenda will be case 2022-0040. And this is located at 1488 and 1508 Boy Scout Road. And it's an application to rezone from R2 Urban Residential District and C3 General Business District to M1 Industrial District, and has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there any, I think there's opposition present, right? Raise your hand if you're here in opposition. All right, and you're the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, talking to the applicant, actually as of Friday and as of this morning, I think he wishes to withdraw this request.
Okay. Is that the case that you wish to withdraw?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does the planning commission want to hear the staff presentation or hear from opposition or hear from the applicant?
No, I don't, but I do want to make a comment if I can.
Yeah,
At the
Commissioner
appropriate time.
Yes, go ahead.
You know, I've probably gotten more phone calls and emails from citizens about this because the truth is that they've been using this parcel of land that is zone commercial. They have been using it as manufacturing right now, today. There's a noise, there's the machine, it's a wood chipper, I guess, or something. I don't know what all it is, but they're manufacturing in a commercial zone, and they've been doing that for months, which has been disturbing the peace of the people that have lived there for years and years in Middle Valley. And although I appreciate the gentleman withdrawing the request for the zone, it needs to be more than withdrawing the request for the zone. It needs to be that they get in compliance with the existing zone, which is commercial. And I realize that's not something that this body would necessarily make, but it is something that I think that the county needs to make sure. And I want to assure the citizens that took off today to come down here because you were concerned about your neighborhood and your peace being disturbed, that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they're in compliance with the zone, which is a commercial zone, but not a manufacturing zone. And I thank you for those of you that have written, for those of you that have emailed, and I thank you for withdrawing today on that. So,
Mr. Chairman, can staff make a comment too, just for people in the room today? Doesn't mean, once it's withdrawn, the applicant can come back, or additional property owner can come back and apply for rezoning again. So just keep a watch on the property for new signs if the applicant comes back to rezone again. This doesn't mean the project's not, couldn't come back.
can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So
Commissioner
if we voted this down, they couldn't come back for a year?
That's at county commission level.
Okay. But if we voted to deny it, it would go to the county commission, and then the county commission would vote to deny it, and then it would be a year if the commission did vote to deny it.
Year from county commission action.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to note that I did try to withdraw on Friday and missed the electronic deadline. So that's all I was here for. And I would like to also, since it's a conversation between us, if you could let the folks that took time out of their day today, I'm sorry for that. We did try to get the word out on Friday. I'm sorry for anybody's waste of time. And our intention is to always be in compliance and obey by the law.
Thank you. All right, so we have the applicant requesting to withdraw. What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to withdraw, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is, on the modified agenda is, was item 16. Now 2 is 2022-0057, and this is located at 1115 Northmore Road. And it's an application to rezone from R1 residential zone to R3 residential zone. And this case has staff recommendation to defer. There's opposition present, right? Okay. And is the applicant present? Okay. We'll hear from staff.
Mr. Chairman, we also received opposition and support for this application.
Okay.
So this is case 2022-57, request to rezone from R1 to R3 residential zone. You see on the screen, it's R1. To the north of this property is R1. If you go further north along Northmore, you do see RT1 zoning. To the south is R2, and to the east and west is R1. This is about 3 acres in size. Number of units, at the time the application was 79. I think they've now since reduced that number to 63. So the density number is a little bit lower now. But the proposed use is multifamily, independent senior housing. There's been no recent zoning history for this site. 2006, there was a request to the north to rezone from RT1 to RTZ. That was approved by City Council. That's in 1100 to 1200 blocks of Northmore Road. Then in 1995, there was some property rezoned from R2 and R3 to R1, and from C5 to O1 through the Brainerd area zoning study. So in this general area, there's really not been any zoning request. Again, this is located Northmore Road. It's part of the property owned by Tucker Church. To the east is Brainerd High School. To the north is single family attached. And to the west is single family detached. And to the south is office and single family detached. This is a view of the site looking towards the church. This is the view of the site, left-hand side, Northmore going north. You can see the church again to the north. This is the view east of the site, which is Brainerd High School. This is the view south of the site, which is the office. Again, this is further north. This is the church that owns the property, who's asking for the rezoning. And this is the view west of the site, which is the single-family residential subdivision. This property is located in North Brainerd area plan, which is adopted in 2004, which recommends low-density residential, which is primarily single-family dwellings of the dominant land use, with some exceptions made for townhomes, patio homes, and two-family dwellings. Also, one of the goals of the plan is to maintain residential integrity by supporting appropriate residential and commercial development. The plan also encourages the preservation of existing single-family neighborhoods, while recommending the majority of the area remain single-family. The proposed 79-unit multifamily development does not meet all the plan goals stated above, but staff acknowledges this location could be developed with a multifamily development that serves maybe the community's needs. The proposal could potentially meet the plan goals through thoughtful design and buffering, etc. Staff recommends to defer this proposed request to R3. The primary purpose for deferral is in order for the applicant to meet with the neighborhood and surrounding community, to have conversations with elected officials about the proposed project, to determine if there is a need or desire in the community to introduce different housing type at this location. There could be a need for this type of housing at this location, again, based on the land use plan and preservation of the neighborhood. It makes it a little difficult, but you do have institutional uses nearby. So again, the primary reason for deferrals for the applicant to meet and have those discussions with the community and neighborhood to see what the best use of this property is. So staff recommends to defer for those meetings to occur. But we do acknowledge this could be a great site for a potential use like
Thank you.
senior housing.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, for the intended use, we'd have to go to council for a special exceptions permit still for a
R3,
for
no.
senior living.
I think it's by right.
This is by right
By right, in R3.
in R3.
R3.
Okay, because I know.
Because we don't have a thing as senior living. It'd be multifamily apartments.
Okay, so this isn't assisted.
Just says senior, the applicant can probably speak better than that, but I think it's not senior assisted. I think it's just senior living.
Okay, but assisted, we would be under SEP.
Yes, if it was assisted, it would be a Board of Appeals permit, but this is more like apartments, age restricted.
Okay, maybe the applicant can clarify that then. Thank you.
Mr. Farmer.
Yeah. My question for for Brian, and it's really more about the staff recommendation than the case, but since it's right here in front of us now, you know, I read these staff recommendations every month, and they're usually based on the merits of the application, and I just don't ever recall a staff recommendation to recommend deferring a case to meet with the community and elected officials and kind of some broad language about getting the community involved and I'm all about the community being involved, but it's just, I don't remember this directly where having an applicant recommend to get out to determine a different type of housing. Can you speak to that?
Yes, we have done something very similar to that in the past, and strictly looking, if you go strictly by the land use plan, it would be a denial. But that plan was written in 2004, 17 years ago.
Right.
So one of the things is, should the community or developer get involved in having those discussions, is that land use plan recommendation still valid? Maybe this is a perfect use. But at the time, 2004, maybe it made more sense to have low density residential. But looking at adjacent land uses, you have a church to the north, you got a school to the east of the site. What would be the appropriate use? But if we're going based strictly on the land use plan, it would be most likely denial based on that plan recommendation. So the hopes were to have two sides talk, and maybe they've already done that. We just don't know. Again, another purpose of this meeting is to have that public planning discussions today.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Farmer, anything else? All right, we'll hear first from the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, and to the members of the Planning Commission, my name is Gary Hathaway. I am the pastor of Greater Tucker Baptist Church. And with me, I have Eamon and Tyler, who are with Penrose Developers and Engineering. This proposal is on behalf of our CDC, Greater Tucker Baptist Community Development Corporation. Part of our vision is to become a living church that really impacts the community. We believe this project lines up with our vision to really live out the gospel through serving others, especially to those who are less fortunate. Chattanooga is a great city. It's a growing city. And more people are realizing that the city is a great place to live. Along with that, property values are increasing. The costs of buying a home and rental rates are really on the rise. Unfortunately, there's a segment of the community being left behind in the progress of the city. It is our seniors with low incomes. Many of them have worked hard and sacrificed to save their families in Chattanooga, to raise their families in Chattanooga. They have paid their taxes. They have been good citizens. However, in their senior years, which we call the fourth quarter of their lives, they have to live in houses and communities that are not well kept, not energy efficient, and in some cases, not safe. Even at the church, I get calls all the time, and from our members. Just the past 2 weeks or so, a lady called and says, Pastor, said, can you help us to find my family, to find another place to live, to rent? I said, because I need a place that's handicap accessible, but where I am, we don't have that. I talked to the landlord. The landlord doesn't do anything. And also to move, the rate for rent would be much higher. So we get these types of calls almost every month. We believe our seniors should be able to maintain their dignity in affordable, safe, and efficient housing and communities. This is why we are requesting for approval of this proposed request. Our CDC will maintain the land. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Farmer?
I'm sure the answer is yes, but your application does talk about senior housing. You are going to restrict it to senior housing. It will be restricted in your covenants.
That is correct.
Great. Thank you.
55.
Councilman Lidford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pastor, will there be any kind of medical or nursing type services offered that would put this into the assisted category, do you think?
No, not assisted. We'd like to be in a position where maybe people can receive some care per se, but no. I mean, it would be more like health awareness, exercise programs along those lines. But it's independent living. It's no assisted living.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant before we hear from the opposition?
Brian, can we, is that in our toolbox to limit something to 55 plus, just as we go through and listen to this?
My first response would be no. I'll defer to Dan, perhaps, but I don't know. County Commission has done that in the past, age restricted something. I'm not sure that's really legal, be my first opinion. Maybe Dan feels differently. I'll let him.
I would probably defer to the city attorney and find out if that's something we can do at council level.
You brought your developer along.
That's correct.
Did you want to give him the opportunity to speak before we hear from
Thank
opposition?
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Eamon Martin with Penrose Properties, located at 675 Ponce de Leon Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present today. We are Penrose. We are a 45-year-old development firm who has been in the mixed income and affordable housing business across the nation. And we are really excited to be partnering with Greater Tucker to implement their vision for independent senior housing. And just to talk a little bit about, to further answer some of the questions. So sure, there will be no medical services offered on site. As a pastor said, this is independent living. So every apartment will have their own kitchen. So there will be no commercial kitchen, as well as other medical facilities. Although we do try to partner to bring in services, as many for the residents as possible, to address any health challenges and health awareness. But there will be no healthcare services offered on site. And then it's related to the 55 or older use restriction. So the key tool that we will need to finance this project is low-income housing tax credits, which are the way the majority of affordable housing is financed today. Through those tax credits are sold and generate private equity. And these tax credits are allocated by the Tennessee Housing and Development Agency. And so with THDA, we will have a land use restriction recorded against the property that will address age, as well as other tax credit requirements for this program.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're here and you're in opposition and you wish to speak, just coming up to the mic. Councilman Ledford.
I did have one question for the applicant. Pastor, have you met with Councilman Hester yet on this particular project?
Yes, we've met with Hester 3 times.
3 times.
And he is in favor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I apologize. I left one thing out. We have subsequently met with the community. We've had 3 community meetings with the committee. I believe we sent in information of sign-in sheets where we had, I believe at the first meeting, over 35 individuals. Second meeting, we had 65 individuals. In the third meeting, we had 5 to 7 with the immediate adjacent neighborhood.
Thank you.
Sorry, one last thing. We will continue. We know this is just the first step in a long process. So our goal is working with Greater Tucker to continue to engage and meet with the community through this process.
Thank you. You've got 2 minutes after opposition. So if there's anything else you think of, you'd have time then. All right, we'll hear from opposition. And I didn't say it on the front end, but when there's several people that want to speak in opposition, sometimes I interrupt the person at the mic. It's not because I'm being rude or I don't want to hear from you or we don't want to hear from you. It's just because there's several other people behind you. I think there's maybe 4 or 5. Can you raise your hand if you want to speak? Okay, so there's 5 people behind you that want to speak as well as you. And the total time allotted for opposition is 9 minutes. So go ahead.
Okay, I try to make it, excuse me, I try to make it quick. Pastor give a great speech, and I understand, but the pastor doesn't live in the neighborhood. I live in the house where they want to build this. I will look strictly out of my back door, and the back door 3 stories high is taking away everything in the neighborhood. the view, the safety for kids, the drive that the street is already a dangerous street. Moore Road is a dangerous street. They had that many cars to the road. Now, like I say, that's a low income building, no matter what anybody tell you. People in that neighborhood have built their homes, have lived there and paid for their home. They do not want to see a 3-story building put in their backyards, and they can't even look out of their house and look at somebody else's back door. That is wrong as the day is long. If you don't think so, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. I submitted a video pertaining to the water runoff. I'm a resident of 1102 Van Noa Drive. So I'm asking for the video to be, if we can present that so you can see how the runoff will affect the property.
We did receive those. There's three videos, I believe,
Yes,
and they're about a
three.
minute long, something like that each.
If you want to pull it up while we're hearing from other people, we do have just 7 minutes remaining. Is there anything else you'd wish to say?
Yes, and the other property that Penrose have located in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I had
Can you turn the volume down? We can just, there, go ahead.
I had asked them if they had any properties located in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and the response was yes. I think they have 3 properties, and they are not thriving at this time. When they first were built, of course, everything looked picture perfect at first. And as the years went on, the property started going down, declining. So that's another concern we have. If they were approved to build this unit, who's to say in the future they won't become run down, and that's something we have to live with. So I'm just asking you all to take that in consideration as well. And if you would look at the videos that were presented pertaining to the water runoff.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I live at 1102 Bernard Drive, and I took those videos. My main concern and issue I want to confront them with is the water runoff. If you go towards North Moore Road out my back door, it goes uphill. So if they put a lot of concrete and lay anything there, the water runoff and the drain runs right behind the neighbors on Bernard Drive. It comes right to the back of our door. The runoff is going to come in our backyard, as Mr. Keith spoke about. They have water, as you can see on the video now, sitting in the field all the time. It's like a swamp. After about 20 minutes of rain, and it goes uphill there, if you can see it, and there's the water sitting in the field. Once they put the layers of brick and all the weight up there, it's going to run off towards the residents that are on Bernard Drive to our back door. That's my main concern about the runoff and the rezoning. Asking for you to deny it, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I did have some more signatures for the petition. I did submit some on Friday, but these are additional.
Can you hand that to Mr. Varone there on the end? Did anybody else wish to speak? Ma'am.
Hello, thank you. My name is R.C. Reeves. I live in the neighborhood as well as my parents. So I own a home on Shawnee Circle, and my parents are on Learning Lane, which is right in Woodmore. My issue is twofold. One, the individuals at the church, the majority of them do not live in the area. And so I have an issue with a 3-story building being put up in that area. This is an older neighborhood. Most individuals are already retired. And then the other piece is Woodmore is depressed. So we don't really have like all of the infrastructure that you would need anyway for someone coming in a large complex, as in grocery stores, Brainerd Road is depressed, etc. So I just feel like it would add a lot of additional people to that area when we don't have the services to support them anyway. And then as someone else mentioned, that street, if you've been around that curve, is very dangerous. And I just don't see how you would have individuals coming out of that area. You got the school right there and just coming around that corner as it takes you to Shallowford Road and then to Brainerd Road. So I'm asking for this to be denied as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
guess my concern is a little different because the pastors and the development people are harping on senior citizen, and it's going to be handicap accessible. Well, most of us in that neighborhood, we're senior citizens too, who have worked very hard to pay for our home and was hoping that we would be able to retire and enjoy our home. Now you're talking about putting up a building that's 3 stories high, and it's supposed to be handicap accessible for senior citizens. I'm a senior citizen. I can't, in case of a fire or something, I can't come down 3 flights. So what is going to be their procedures or steps, or what are they going to have to get those people out of that building if there's ever a fire? And I think that's something you need to think about, because a lot of those people will not be able to come down those stairs. And the last time I checked procedures, in case of a fire, you're not supposed to get on the elevator. So that's something they need to think about. And I hope that you all deny that, because deny this claim for building this building in a neighborhood that people have worked so hard to pay for their homes, and now we'd like to enjoy it.
Thank you, ma'am. You've got 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you. I'll be very brief, and we'll bring our engineer to talk a little bit about the water runoff per se. That's his area of expertise. Let me just say we fully hear and understand what the residents are saying, and we've been very straightforward with them. We've tried to really work with them, and we believe in our planning process that we can mitigate all of those situations that they're talking about through working with our developers. We cannot change the 3-story design per se, but we think the water runoff and some of the other items along the lines of a depressed area, we think it will spur new development in the Brainerd area, and that would be a good thing for the community.
Good afternoon. My name is Tyler Gross. I'm working with the church and the development team on the development of this property. I'd like to quickly address the stormwater concerns. Obviously, we're really early in this process, but if this were to be approved, part of our design process is to work with the city and the state to ensure there's no adverse impacts related to stormwater. We will capture, treat, manage, and then release runoff from our property so that it doesn't affect the upstream neighbors. And in fact, it's actually city regulation and state law that our stormwater cannot adversely affect the adjacent properties. So we have to do that. And, you know, I understand that's a concern, and I've seen the videos and we understand that, but we will address that and meet the local and state regulations.
Thank you.
And then the last thing, we do have support signatures and letters and sign-in sheets.
Mr. Farmer.
What's the required, is there a required buffer if this was to pass between R1 and R3?
Yes, I believe it's top C, which is 10 foot.
So meaning that if this was to pass, the applicant be required to have a buffer between the adjoining neighbors, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Would a fence suffice as that as well?
Instead of the buffer, no. I think
it needs to be a landscape buffer.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if it's a question for the pastor or the gentleman from Atlanta, one of the two, whoever wants to come up, but is this project viable at all at a 2-story project?
So that's the challenge to get the density, which we need for the economies of scale, the 2-story from a constructability standpoint. We all know what's going on in the construction industry. And then It would further lengthen the building, which we think would allow us not to create the buffers between the single family neighborhood. 3-story density, it allows us to push back, as well as the gentleman said, create a landscape and potential fence.
The buffer would be required based on the zoning, no matter whether it was 2-story or 3-story. So,
but it allows a building to push a 3-story building further away.
so is that a no, or is that it changes the design?
No, that changes the design.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, then a no, probably for constructability. And
The project does not happen. If it comes out of here with a 2-story recommendation and goes on to city council, the project probably will not happen. Is that the case?
Most likely, yes, sir.
That's all I have for now.
Mr. Chairman, I was just gonna say, if you do decide to table this or defer it until next month, we can come back with a recommendation. There has been other information. We just didn't have the information that some of what we heard today when we were making a recommendation about age restricted and other issues. But if that's something that you'll like as a recommendation, we're happy to come back and bring something next month.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Ludford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the development team, the egress and ingress looks like it's going to access the parking lot of Greater Tucker.
Yeah, that's one area. There's also another ingress egress, which could bring the residents to behind the church from an ingress egress. There's a curb cut.
But they'll be using existing church parking or pavement, so to speak. You're stating you build a lot of these. So when I see increase in traffic, when I see increase in crime, when I see increase in noise, do seniors cause those kinds of issues in your experience?
No, and no, and in fact, in the site plan that you have, what we see from a traffic standpoint, seniors don't drive as much as multifamily or family apartments. So the parking, actually, we see the demand for parking spaces to be less, to be a half a space per unit to 1 space per unit. So we don't see the same impact with traffic. And as far as crime, again, this is, Penrose will maintain ownership of the improvements. The church CDC will own the land. So we will be in this deal for a minimum of 15 years. And again, these projects, not only ours, but other tax credit developers, these are well managed with private investors who are incentivized to manage these, right, to maintain these for long term. And that there's, even evidence of tax credit housing has improved and increased property values. So we don't, especially for seniors, right, generate less traffic, less noise than would multifamily.
Last question, please. And this isn't a planning commission. You'll have to let me put my city council hat on. Will you be coming before city council or the administration for a pilot?
Yes.
I figured you would. Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'm sorry, sir. The time for public comment has ended. We do have a motion to defer. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. I'm not making the motion. Yes, we have a staff recommendation to defer. What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to defer.
I'll second that. Dan, thank you for those comments. I think coming from the staff, a recommendation would be very helpful on this. Reading between the lines, it sounds like this is a favorable development, but I think we'd like to see that from the staff.
We have a motion and a second.
How many days are we deferring?
30 days.
Yeah, and to your point, I think last time, Mr. Chairman, the 30-day deferrals have compounded scheduling issues. So I would move to defer this for 60 days or vote on it today. I think continuing to defer things for 30 days compounds the schedule.
Okay. We have a motion and it has been amended to defer for 60 days, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer?
What are we deferring for? I guess let's be clear on that. We have a staff recommendation that is instructing the applicant to get with elected officials in the community. I hear that they've already done that. They've met with their city council person. They've had community meetings. I've got tons of signatures here. So it seems to me like that box has been checked. And so I guess I'm asking my colleagues here, I mean, or am I voting for a 60-day deferral so we can update the staff recommendation? If that's the case, I think we could probably get this done next month.
Any other discussion?
I was gonna let Brian respond to that if possible.
Yes, we can get it done in 30 days. However, the deferral was more like Commissioner Farmer was right. It was about hearing the neighborhood meet, did the applicant meet? And from that, I don't know that we've heard the same information for next month's recommendation as well, but now we have heard that, I think we can come back with a recommendation.
Could you have a recommendation? Would it change before we got to council?
Well, I think you got to have a recommendation coming out of this body. I'll let Dan.
Yeah, I think what I was hoping to do is to get with the developer, understand now some of the issues that we've heard from the neighbors and try to come up with potentially some conditions or something that could be considered.
We have a motion, and it has been seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend my motion back to 30 days, given what information I was just given.
We have a motion, and it has been seconded and amended again to a 30-day motion, 30-day deferral.
Chairman, I'm kidding.
Sure. Any discussion? Sure. Mr. Palmer?
Given that it's going back to staff for a recommendation, and after listening to opposition, my biggest complaint with kind of what I'm seeing here today is the site plan itself showing very little sensitivity to the neighboring houses. And that needs to be addressed in a more sensitive and comprehensive way. So that's just my note to staff.
Thank you. Anything else? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And thank you all for being here, and thank you for the applicant. See you again in June, May, April.
So write that date down. No. I thought that was the whole mission. The administration, public, and that's just. Well, no, I know. I'm strictly going with concept. Concept. I knew it was a pilot. There's no way you can pull this off without a pilot. I agree with you. Yeah. Great. But also these conversations get so deep past what we're supposed to do.
I got them out.
And it's hard because the whole is close. Yeah.
All right.
That's it.
Well, you've got some room to social distance if you want now.
You got to see the other.
We'll move on. Top of the agenda. So we'll follow along with the printed agenda that you have there in front of you, having already heard case 3 and 16. So I'll call them out by their original agenda item number. Item 1, case 2022-0038, located at 9638, 9642 East Brainerd Road. It's an application to rezone from R2A to O1, and it has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is mandatory referral. Item 2, case 2022-0039. And this is located at the 200 block of Delawana Terrace. And this is a right-of-way closure, and it has a staff recommendation to approve. Mr. Schultz.
Mr. Chairman, we did receive some emails in opposition to this, but it was more related to potential apartments being developed. Right now, the thing before you is a right-of-way closure. The property is zoned R1. I do believe the property is also being cleared as we speak. Cassie's reached out to the LDO. There was no permit granted for that land disturbance, so clearing should have stopped on the site. But again, the request in front of you today is for right-of-way closure, not a rezoning for apartments.
All right. Is there any opposition present? You're here in opposition? Okay. Are you here in opposition to a right-of-way closure? So what staff was just saying is that the case that we're hearing today is a mandatory referral for a right-of-way abandonment, a right-of-way closure. So a section of road that has been city property would become private property. In the action that's taken today, it is not in regards to the use of the property, what's built on the property, or whether or not land clearing is currently being done without a permit. So the only item, so I guess I'm just wanting to be perfectly clear. Are you in opposition to a section of road that has been public becoming private? Well, can you pull the exhibit up?
Yes. Here's the site plan. It's a really excessive right of way at this location that's owned by the public can build a road in it. It's really wide. And so it makes this one lot to the left, bottom left, very unusable because a lot of it's taken up by right of way. If that.
Sir, could you go to the microphone and state your name?
Yes.
My name is Michael Choate, and I'm associated with the property at 207 Delwana.
It is this one I see the little red pointer on now.
That's the upper side of the street, correct?
Yes, that's a large right of way through there. The applicant's requesting to abandon a portion of that right of way. By that abandonment, it would put that right of way back to 50 foot, which is typical for local streets in the city of Chattanooga.
I went by the property yesterday. Just happened to be out that way and noticed, and I have concerns because I found debris on our property that I know weren't there. And so that's why I'm here. So I don't know whether I'm objecting to what you're asking or not, but I am concerned about what's going on out there and what I saw across the street with the lack of silt fencing and proper procedures going on over there, and the mess and the debris that's been dumped on our property, and then other limbs that seem to be from tree clearing activities across the street are on the far side of the street. So I do have concerns with respect to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's where the land disturbance come in without a permit. A lot of those things would hopefully be caught through that permitting process.
Right. All right. We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is case 2022-0041. And it's item 4 on the agenda, and it's located at 1401 Slayton Avenue. And it's an application to rezone from C2 Convenience Commercial Zone to UGC. And it has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? And are you familiar with the conditions? Do you have any concern or comment? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 4, case 2022-0042. And this is located at 7100 Hickson Pike, and it's an application to rezone from C2 to R3MD. And has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, case 2022-0043 is located at 2626 Cowart Street. And it's an application to rezone from R3 to C3 and has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions, the condition being that it limit to residential uses only. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Are you familiar with the conditions? Do you have any opposition to them? What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve with conditions, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda, item 7, 2022-0044 is located at 3415 Montview Drive. It's an application to rezone from R1 to R2. It has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? And is the applicant present?
Mr. Chairman, we did receive some emails in opposition there provided as part of the record.
Thank you. Can you take us through the staff presentation on that?
Sure. This is case 2022-0044. Application rezone from R1 residential zone to R2 residential zone for to put an existing duplex back into use on the property. Currently 1 acre in size. Number of units is 2. That's a density of 2 dwelling units per acre. See on the screen, it's currently zoned R1. To the north, there is R3 zoning, and then further north, about a block over, there is some R2 property. But to the south, east, and west, immediately abutting this site is R1. There's no zoning history. Actually, this site was down zoned from R2 to R1 through the Brainerd area zoning study back in 1995. So this property did receive down zoning, which made that duplex or triplex a legal grandfathered use, but it's lost its power for more than 100 days. And because of that, it loses that grandfather protection. It's currently, you can see in a few minutes, you'll see it's currently uses duplex, but right now, everything abutting this property to the south, east, and west are single family dwellings, and to the north, immediately abutting this property is an apartment complex. This is a view of the structure that's on the site. At one point, it appears this may have been used as a triplex. It's important to note, if the R2 zoning is approved, it cannot be used as a triplex. It can only be put back into use as a duplex. But this is a picture of the site. This is the view east of the site on Montview Drive, which is again single-family dwellings. This is the view looking south of the site, seeing more single-family attached dwellings. This is the view south of the site on Montview Drive, again more single-family dwellings. There is no adopted land use plan in this area to provide policy guidance on zoning cases. So sometimes we fall back to the comp plan, which is based on intensity levels, ranging from level 1 to 5, with level 1 being the lowest or least potential for development. This falls into 2 categories, level 1 and 5. Level 5 describes the highest potential for high intensity development based on access to infrastructure. So staff recommendation is to approve Single-family detached residential character of the area on Montview Drive has not changed significantly since the 1995 Brainerd downzoning occurred that rezoned a large portion of Brainerd to R1. There is a need for more diverse and affordable housing options citywide that has increased in the community. Bringing an existing non-conforming duplex into zoning compliance will meet the comprehensive plan goals, also provide housing options. Staff also recommends working with Land Development Office to bring the existing structure up to current residential codes. So based on that being it's an existing structure, staff would recommend to approve.
Thanks, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? All right, we'll hear from the applicant first, then we'll hear from the opposition.
Hi, I'm Winnie Spann with Whitewater Property Management, and I'm representing the owner. And this property was previously a duplex, and we would just like it to be back into that. We are trying to provide affordable housing in that area.
Thank you. We'll hear from the opposition.
I live next door to this property, and they've never used it as a duplex. It's been triplex, quadplex. It's loaded up with people who sublet once they get in. And there's not enough parking, garbage pickup. I've got a 20-year history with this place, and it has created issues from day one because there's no management of the property. Once it's rented, owners are nowhere around. So, you know, if it's a true duplex with management, no problem. But it's just rented out and not managed. So that's the main issue we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can we get the opposition just spoke his name and address for the record?
Yeah, sure. Mark Stusock, 3417 Montview Drive.
Thank you.
My name's Colin Woodcook, and I actually live at 112 Woodlawn Drive, which you can actually see in one of those pictures. I'm a 13-year resident at the location, and I would agree with what Mr. Stusock said. This place has never been used as a single family or duplex. There's actually a door in the picture, which is a fourth door at the bottom of the driveway, which is used. You know, having two children on a blind curve right here with the amount of traffic that this house has produced with the inhabitants in it is definitely not good for our neighborhood. I don't think you see a lot of opposition here because it is on a corner and there's only about 4 houses that it affects. But those 4 houses obviously are super important to the people that live there now. You know, I wish you can see from the yard there, it's trash filled constantly. There's trucks, there's cars, there's, you know, loud music coming out of it on a regular basis. You could probably look up the 911 call detail on it. There's been an overdose in the house, which resulted in a death. I could go on, but I strongly recommend that as long as the owner does not occupy the inhabitant, that this remains a single family home. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
I have a question for the two gentlemen, if I may. I'm hearing if it were actually a duplex, then you would welcome that, and that's what the zoning request is for today. So the second part of that is for Whitewater Management. How long have you managed this property, and can you attest to or add into why it's was out of compliance?
We've only had this property a few weeks, so we have
Okay.
not been the property manager with all the things he was talking
Okay,
about.
so in 2 minutes, can you give me, because this is a zoning request, not a management or past history
Correct.
request. Can you give me, since you've owned it for 2 weeks, your sales pitch on how you're going to make this better for the neighbors? 'Cause
Right. I'm representing the owner, and our properties, our tenants go through a very rigorous process to rent our homes, and we understand that there previously was criminal activity, but we are very cautious about who we rent to, and all the building codes will be brought up to standard, and I think that they actually will be pleased when they see it become a true duplex.
And they'll have someone to call when things
Absolutely.
go wrong. And that was not available before. I apologize. We're talking way out of the zoning context here, but I think this is important when we are trying to provide housing opportunities in our city. So they will have someone to call 24 hours a day.
Absolutely.
Okay. Will you be remodeling because obviously it's something that's divided into 3 or 4?
I'm unsure. I'm assuming the owner will want to do that. It will have to be, because it has been used in a different context.
Okay, and this will come to city council for us to review as well, and Councilwoman Coonrod will obviously have her eyes on it as well. So,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer.
Ma'am, how long has this owner owned the property?
I am unclear on that. I don't have that information. I don't think he's had it very long.
Okay, they're not here.
No, they're not.
Okay, you don't know.
I don't know how long they've owned it. No. Mm-mm. It was just brought to us as part of their portfolio.
Okay, thank you.
You're out of time, Mr. Farmer. You got anything else? Any other discussion? We've got a staff recommendation to approve. We've had the opportunity to hear from the applicant in opposition. What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8 on the agenda is case 2022-0045, and it's located at 500 and 816 Dodds Avenue and 800 Woodard Avenue and 2600 and 2800 Macaulay Avenue. And it's an application for a special permit for an institutional plan unit development and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9, mandatory referral 2022-0046, located at the 800 block of Dodds Avenue, is a mandatory referral for right-of-way closure and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is case 2022-0047, and this is located at 5246, 50, and 58 Old Hickson Pike. And it's an application to rezone from R2 to R3. It has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Mr. Schultz.
Mr. Chairman, we did receive opposition emails, and as you have in front of you as part of the record as well. But this is case 2022-47. This is a request to rezone from R2 residential zone to R3 residential zone for proposed use of apartments, flats, or townhomes. It's about 21 acres in size. Number of units proposed are 74, and that's a density of 3.52 dwelling units per acre. As you can see on the screen, this property is currently zoned R2. To the north is R2 zoning. To the south is a mixture of zones such as R2, C5, and to the west is R1 and R3. And then to the east across the railroad tracks, there's a mixture of zones as well from M2 to C2. And to the southwest is RT1. On this particular piece of property, there was a request in 2019 to rezone from R2 to RTZ. The application was withdrawn. And to the southwest of this site, which is the R3 property, with the red arrow pointing to that, in 2020, there was a request to rezone that from R1 to R3 with several conditions. There were 5 conditions based on landscaping, vinyl coated chain link fence being put in, height limitations, and no residential buildings shall house less than 6 units. As part of that request, staff had a recommendation limiting the density to 12 million units per acre. That did not make the conditions, but that was a recommendation on that case, and we'll get to that in a few minutes why that's important. This is a single-family dwelling on this property as well as vacant land. To the north is a parking lot for the church. To the west is single-family detached residential. To the south is apartments, and then you have also to the further south more commercial uses along Hickson Pike and Old Hickson Pike. To the west are many warehouses and a railroad track. And then further west, or actually to the southeast, you have single-family attached dwellings. So there's a mixture of uses in this general vicinity. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site. This is a view looking on Old Hickson Pike. This is a single-family, adjacent single-family dwelling. This is south of the site. Again, more single-family attached dwellings. This property is located in Hickson North River Community Plan, which was adopted in 2005. The land use plan recommendation is medium density residential, which is classified as basically single family, townhouses, and patio homes. 2, 3, and 4 family dwellings if the density is compatible. This request is compatible with adopted plan. Sorry, I should say it's partially compatible. The density is higher than the plan recommendation. The proposed residential uses are supported by the plan, but the proposed density of 21 dwelling units per acre is significantly higher than the adjacent density in the vicinity. The request is compatible with adjacent uses and development form. The proposed density exceeds the medium density residential recommended by the Hickson North River Plan. The Hickson North River Plan states that multifamily can be introduced into the area as long as density is compatible. Therefore, staff recommends conditions limiting the density. Staff also recommends a condition prohibiting driveways onto Old Hickson Pike as suggested by our transportation department. So staff recommends approve with 2 conditions, limited to a residential density of 12 dwelling units per acre and no individual driveways on Old Hickson Pike. Again, that 12 dwelling units per acre comes from a previous staff recommendation and is supported by the Hickson North River Community Plan. So this comes to you from staff with a recommendation to approve with 2 conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? All right, we'll hear first from the applicant, Mr. Jones.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Alan Jones with ASA Engineering at 714 Cherry Street. I'm working with Tuba Warden on this site. They own all 4 of these lots, and we're looking at bringing a nice townhome community to this property. So I'm in agreement with RPA on condition number 2, that we do not need to have individual driveways located along Hickson Pike. I don't think that's appropriate. I think that's a wise condition. In fact, if you look at the site plan, the topography for this site actually affords us a great opportunity to be able to have all the garages for all the townhomes that face Old Hickson Pike to be in the rear. Because of the topography, the garages will be parked underneath with the first and second level being visible from the street. So from the street frontage, you're just going to see the view of a nice 2-story home, townhome with the parking that's hidden down below in the rear. And that same profile will step down the hill toward the rear of the property. I do, however, would ask Planning Commission for y'all to consider removing the recommendation of the 12 units per acre. I think, and I think Brian highlighted this in his presentation, but back in 2020, Pratt & Associates, just right across the street, rezoned their property to R3. Similar condition, RPA recommended a 12 unit per acre cap, but that did not survive through City Council. I think with the desire that, we do, there is a desire to bring more housing stock to Chattanooga. And I do believe this townhome development, both from an aesthetic standpoint, it reads from the street as a nice medium density townhome development. Yes, there are some more units on the backside, but it won't have the appearance of an apartment complex that we so often see with R3. So, and there's a little bit of mixed maybe communication on what medium density is. Brian mentioned in his presentation that townhomes are considered medium density. If we're rezoning this to UGC and trying to put a large apartment complex on the site, that is totally inappropriate. But I think a townhome style development with the R3 zoning that's allowed is appropriate for the space. In talking with Councilman Smith, I did ask him, reach out to him on the front end, asking if I should hold a neighborhood meeting or just mail out letters to the residents on Gooden Lane. So I did mail out letters. Obviously, there are a few individuals that are here in opposition. I have not heard from them yet. Neither has Councilman Smith. And just so I think I'd be just curious to see what their concerns are. But if you do look at the overall zoning in this area, yes, Gooden Lane is an R1 neighborhood that we want to try to respect by doing the townhome frontage along Old Hickson Pike. But surrounding the entire property is M1, C2, R4, R3. So I don't think from a planning perspective that this is too far out of context.
Any questions for the applicant before we hear from? Did you want to say something, sir? Did you want to say something? Okay. We'll hear from the opposition.
My name is Cheryl Fort and my house was on there. I live at 5009 Gooden Lane and right on the corner of Old Hickson Pike Road and Gooden Lane. And I just don't see where we're going to have, and we have so much traffic on that road now. It's kind of a cut through for a lot of people that are trying to make a shortcut between two major roads of 152nd Highway and Hickson. And there's so much traffic. It's such a curvy road and we're adding double 74 more cars in and out of that location. I just think unless that road is widened and turning lanes are put in, it's very dangerous. Many times I'm pulling out on Old Hickson Road and you look both ways, it's clear, but people do not drive the speed limit there. They drive very fast around that curvy road. And in seconds, you can have a car right on top of you. I just think that something should be thought about adding all that more traffic to that area. Plus the church traffic on Sunday, but that's, and they have a preschool there. There's people do not abide by the traffic, by the speed limit there. And I just wanted to bring that to the attention. That's my big concern. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your time. My name is Barb Van Allen. I live down the street at 776 Woodgrove Circle. And my concern is the density. I wholeheartedly support the staff recommendations and hope that the board will take those under serious condition. With the apartment complexes that have been added there, very active park, soccer fields, a church on the corner that has active daycare and schooling going on. The density in that very small area is already just almost exceeding what the area can handle as far as traffic and room. And I would encourage the board not to exceed the existing density that has been set by previous plans. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jones.
Just a few comments on the traffic. So right now there are 4 homes that are on these 4 lots. And yes, we'll be adding more traffic, which I think is probably the number one discussion I hear on all my rezoning cases. But we will be reducing 4 driveways to 1 access point, and we're going to be away from the curve on the straightaway shot. So I think from a safety standpoint, I think we'll be managing that in a respectful way. And it's interesting. She mentioned churches, daycares, parks are in this vicinity. That's perfect amenities for townhome development. And some of those can be walkable. As the sidewalks in this area do get improved upon. Obviously, we'll be adding sidewalks along the entire frontage of our property. But as this area does continue to develop, that just makes a lot of these amenities even more walkable and trying to get more cars off the road.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Jones, you answered one question, and you will put in sidewalks along Old Hickson Pike, making this area walkable, so to speak, or begin to set the precedence for future, maybe even considerations by the city for sidewalks. The second question is there room for a decel lane?
We can study that between now and city council.
And if you could put that into your consideration, I think that would, it works in District 4. I'm sure it works probably the same in District 3. And it seems to quell some concerns and get traffic off the road faster.
We could definitely look into that.
And is there a height limitations in conditions on Brian?
Just 2.5 stories.
2.5 stories. Okay. That's all I had for now. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We've heard from the applicant and the opposition. Had an opportunity for questions. We've got a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. What's the will of the commission? Do we have a motion to approve?
May I ask for clarity? Is that with or without the 12 units per acre?
Mr. Jones, I'm going to stay with staff recommendations on that, and you can take that up with Councilman Smedley.
We have a motion to approve with conditions. And it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? Yep. Mr. Farmer.
Councilman Ledford, you know how much I respect you, your motions, your opinions. Comma, but. And I was going to speak to this. I was going to speak to this condition before your motion. If not, when do we start delivering, affordable housing and additional housing opportunities? I think this site makes a ton of sense. I can tell you, I don't remember signing a contract for less than $200 a square foot in the last 3 or 4 months, except for on townhouses. I think townhouses are an affordable option in our city right now, and I support what you're doing. I think we need it. So I really think we ought to consider sending this to city council without a recommendation for density.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I can. So with that, though, I'm going to have to assume you're calling this an affordable housing project, and this is not an affordable housing project. I want us to be real careful when we use that term, that we use it correctly.
Sure.
This is not an affordable housing project.
Thank you. Point being that the price point for townhouses is typically less than a single family house in our city.
I will agree with you on that point, sir.
Mr. Reuter.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask Brian a question. And I think we did look at the project that was recently approved down the street and tried to make this density similar to the previous one.
It was. There's the 2020 case to the southwest. We had a recommendation of 12 dwelling units per acre, but that was not approved by Planning Commission or City Council.
What was approved by Planning Commission or City Council?
Let me go back. I believe it was no condition on density. It was more related to landscaping, height, and dumpster location.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chair.
So precedent is no density conditions.
From legislative body and Planning Commission, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Quick question for Mr. Jones. What is, without any cap on density, what are you planning for number wise?
So the cap on the R3 density is 74 units. That's what we're planning for.
74.
74.
And with the 12 units per acre,
That would bump us down to whatever 3.5 times 12 is, 42. She is good at math.
So Chattanooga would have to build those, 25 units in Ottawa? Or opposite?
Somewhere else, and just
I mean,
taking up more vacant land.
And then they're gonna drive to work and congest the same road. Yeah, I mean, they just get built further.
The densities
further,
come just a matter of where.
further down, right?
Mr. Chair,
Farmer.
and I failed to mention earlier that I did mean to point out in Brian's presentation, the precedent is there across the street in the Pratt property where it was approved by this body and city council. So I think the precedent exists.
Commissioner Farmer, I respect you. No. Here's what the reality is. There's going to be another conversation with Councilman Smith, and the ultimate determination will be at City Council. And so, Mr. Chair, I'm going to go out on a limb because I respect this body's opinions and conversations. I'm going to rescind the motion for the 12 units per acre cap. And that's with the caveat that Councilman Smith will still probably have his final say so. So, but coming out of Planning Commission, I would remove that cap density if then. That would be my motion amended.
Who seconded that motion? We have an amended motion to approve with just the one condition that there be that one ingress egress off of Old Hickson Pike. And it has been properly seconded. Any discussion?
Just one further point, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize, but it's difficult for me to wear two hats at times, knowing what I know at certain times in process. And so I appreciate the conversation and stirring comments made at Planning Commission. So thank you.
Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Next case on the agenda, item 11, is case 2022-0048, and it's located at 4012 West Avenue. And it's an application to rezone R3 to R4 and has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Are you familiar with the conditions? Do you have any questions or concerns in regards to the conditions? What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve with conditions, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a mandatory referral, and it's located at the 1800 block of Vance and Kirby Street, and it's a right-of-way closure, and it has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 13 is a mandatory referral, 2022-0050, and this is located at 1800 block of Vance and Kirby Street, and the 800 block of South Hawthorne Street and South Orchard Knob, and it's a mandatory referral for a right-of-way closure and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve. I'm looking for a second. And it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is case 2022-0051. It's located at 2016-36 Lester Lane and 1220 and 0 East Brainerd Road. And it's an application to rezone R2 and C5 to C2. It has a staff recommendation to deny the applicant's request and approve C2 for part of the property. Is there any opposition present? Mr. Jones, Any thoughts? We'll hear from staff first. Unless your thoughts are, we like the staff recommendation. Okay, we'll hear from staff.
This is case 2022-0051. This is out in East Brainerd. Request to rezone C5 neighborhood commercial zone, R2 residential zone to C2 convenience commercial zone for proposed self-storage. On this property, it's currently on C5 and R2. To the north is R2 and R1. To the south is C2 and R2A and R1. And to the west is R2A and C2. And it doesn't show up on this map. If you go further west at the intersection of Morris Hill and East Brainerd, this section here, that was rezoned a couple months ago to UGC, even though now it's showing R1 and R2. We've just not updated our maps to reflect that UGC designation there. This property is located in the city of Chattanooga, to the south of East Brainerd. You can, well, the map went away. You can see that's in the county, but this property is in the city. There's been several zoning cases in this general area, starting back to all the way back to 1994. But on this particular piece of property, this was rezoned in 2012 from R2A to C5 with conditions. At the time, this was in the county. So C5 was approved. Staff recommended to deny C2 on that case in 2012. 2013, this site was annexed into the city of Chattanooga and zoned C5 with the same conditions that were listed in 2013. Or 2012, sorry. In 2000, property located about 1,100 feet to the southwest of the site was rezoned from R2A to C2. In 1994, property located across the street at 8910 East Brainerd Road was rezoned from R1 to C2. Staff recommended to deny this request because it was speculative zoning at the time, increased the traffic problems, and would encourage additional requests. And then finally, in 1999, there was a request directly across the street at 8922 East Brainerd Road to rezone from A1 and R2A to C2 with conditions. Staff recommended to deny because it would increase traffic problems and would be incompatible with adjacent development form. However, most of those conditions or cases were adopted prior to the land use plan adoption in 2003. It's currently a vacant piece of property. It does have a single family dwelling on the property. Adjacent uses include single family to the north. To the east are commercial uses and single family. To the south is single family, and to the west you have commercial and a large institutional church. This property is about 1,400 feet to the east of East Morris Hill Road. Here's a view of the site from East Brainerd Road. This is another view of the site, left-hand side. This is East Brainerd looking towards Appleton. This is a view of the site as well, looking towards the commercial shopping center at Morris Hill Road. As I stated earlier, this is in the most recent area plan was 2003. It was the East Brainerd Corridor Community Plan. At that time, the plan recommended neighborhood commercial for the front half of the site and low density residential for the rear portion of the site. Of course, neighborhood commercial is intended for smaller to low medium intensity uses, which help to promote and protect sustainability, the vitality of neighborhoods by allowing small development, commercial, which is typically 5,000 square feet or less. Because these uses would be compatible with and complementary to residential properties within the immediate vicinity. The C2 convenience commercial zone with conditions may be considered depending on use, traffic, and nuisance impacts. Types of uses include grocery stores, restaurants, drugstores, bakeries, meat and fish markets, those type of uses. It also went on to say in the plan that uses which generate high volumes of traffic would not be appropriate, such as outdoor sales, service or display, drive-throughs, on-site consumption of beer, wine, or alcoholic beverage, adult-oriented establishments, entertainment establishments, loud music or announcements, liquor stores. Flashing or blinking signs and billboards should not be permitted in this general location. Again, and the back portion recommends low-density residential, which is typically single-family dwellings or single-family subdivisions with a density of 1 to 5 dwelling units per acre. This property is located in a flood hazard area as well as a floodway, as shown on the screen. Staff comments as the request is partially compatible with adopted land use plan, adjacent land uses, and development reform. In order to protect the adjacent single families to the north of the site and to comply with adopted plans, staff recommends approving the C5 zone portion of the site to C2 with conditions and denying the R2 zone portion of the site. The condition is outdoor sales, service displays, drive-throughs, adult-oriented establishments, bowling alleys, billiard rooms, theaters, or other indoor amusement establishments, liquor stores, and billboards shall be prohibited. So staff is recommending to approve the C5 to C2 with those conditions and denying the R2 part to the rear. And here's the site plan that was submitted with the request. You can see along the front of East Brainerd is where the indoor climate controlled storage uses are proposed. And to the rear, which is the R2, that's where more of the traditional mini warehouse buildings will be located. So staff recommends to deny the applicant's request, approve C2 for the front portion and deny the R2 for the back.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This project is in my district and also just down the street from me. I'm very familiar with it. I've been talking about it for a while. This is a very interesting site. It does have some topography issues. There's a floodway drawing right through it. There's actually an abandoned house that was one time under construction, but I think they were probably smart enough to forego it, and it's been sitting there rotting. So I don't anticipate seeing any residential in the back part of this. I do worry about the C2 being those items that you listed. Thank you for always removing those items as staff. Personally, I think they need to be removed permanently from C2 because they always pop up as the go-to conditions. I would like to hear from Mr. Jones on this particular project because I had some requests and also some direction that I wanted to make sure bases were covered before we talk about this any further. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you again, Alan Jones with Ace Engineering. So with this site, we are looking at doing self-storage, as Brian showed on the site plan. Look at your typical nice indoor climate-controlled self-storage building along the road frontage where the commercial is pretty much already there. It's just C5, asking for that C2 zone. And then the rear, putting in the non-climate controlled storage. And part of the reason for combining this property, so one property owner owns everything that's outlined in black as far as this request. If the R2 piece stays as R2, there's really no access to the site. So it really has to be part of a larger development piece. I did reach out to the gentleman, Mr. Hammondtree, excuse me, that owns the two properties there, right on Lester. And yes, those two properties right there. He's actually wanting to sell those, and has actually reached out to the client, my developer, my client, and actually looking at possibly selling those, whether it's for additional self-storage or maybe a kind of a medium density residential use. That's still to be determined. And then the last piece that's in the rear, that one right there, his only access to the site is actually down that long flag on the north side of our property. He actually doesn't have an easement right now through Hammondtree's properties. So his really only legal access is down that flag lot going down to East Brainerd Road, which is just encumbered with a lot of wetlands and streams. So really those three parcels really are challenging as far as being residential in the future as well. Plus, given the fact that the guy, Mr. Hammondtree, looking at wanting to sell those properties. I did reach out to Damrons. I think I pronounced that appropriately. They own a larger tract to the north of this site. If you kind of go to the very tip corner right there, they own a larger R1 home right there, very nice home. But they also, if you look at the aerial, I think there's a different aerial you can look at. They actually have, I think it's pretty large development, not a development, but I think they run their plumbing business out of the rear. So that being is, I think, a compatible, buffer use between the two uses that we're proposing. And then there are two duplexes at the end of Dameron Place, but our, the building distance or the distance from our building to those homes is over 300 feet. So I think from a site distance standpoint, it's going to be not going to be a big impact on those homes. So I think with, and they did mention, Brian did mention that there are floodways and floodplains through here. It is a very tricky environmental site. And that's something that we're going to have to tackle through permitting, both with the state and with the city, looking at potential wetland mitigation, and then just making sure we manage the waterways in the appropriate manner, as we do with every project. We have to get engineered and go through the land development office.
Thank you, Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple of things that in reviewing this, Mr. Jones was, would you be amenable to a self-storage use only condition?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that would be a head nod.
You good?
Because any other C2 product I would not be in favor of.
Correct.
Number two, the buffer to the back of the adjacent properties, how much buffer can you get me to the dam runs and to the other adjacent properties? It looks like the way you drew the site plan, you have at least 40 feet,
I can give you a 50-foot buffer if you need it.
50-foot buffer to the rear properties.
Do you want 50-foot undisturbed or an actual planted
I would
buffer?
like to see it undisturbed.
Correct.
I really would. I think that would be a very nice gesture.
And we can put the 10-foot, the required 10-foot landscape buffer at the 50-foot mark, so we're not disturbing the property lines.
I like that idea. I think that's very sensitive and very respectful to that adjacent property. So I would like to add in the condition, Brian, of a self-storage use only and a 50-foot undisturbed landscape buffer to the adjacent properties to the north. Does that sound amenable to you?
Works for us.
And you and I can talk offline about some other things, construction materials and whatnot.
Correct.
Blah, blah, blah.
Some of the aesthetics.
One of the things that, in looking at this project, first of all, is the land, the issues of floodway. I've watched this property for the last 20 years. No one's going to build a house on it. And I don't want to see another gas station. And self-storage, I've been around these enough to know they do not generate a lot of traffic.
Correct.
That assisted livings, two proven products that don't yield a lot of traffic. And I think if we can work with the design standards we kind of talked about offline, I think we'll have a good use of this challenging property. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to approve C2. Don't hear that often from me. With the conditions I stated for the entire site.
Mr. Chairman, can staff clarify something with Commissioner Ledford on that buffer? Just
Yes.
to make sure, you're talking about this north property line here only?
I think, Mr. Jones, I would like to, well, that's what I'm calling north.
And not
It
this
kind
here.
of points all north.
Yeah. So just to clarify, it's these properties here,
That property.
right there.
What about the land? Can you give me 50 feet on the east or the west side?
Let's discuss that at city council. We may have the rest of those properties under contract in the next month.
You know what? You very well may. We will discuss that further. I'm good with the north.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. And that is in the form of a motion, sir.
We have a motion. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Next item on the agenda is case 2022-0056, and it's located at 2500 and 2502 Bailey Avenue, and it's an application to rezone from RTZ to UGC, and has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Mr. Schultz.
Sure. This is case 2022-0056 in Highland Park. This is a request to rezone from RTZ, residential townhouse zero lot line zone with conditions, to UGC, proposed use multifamily. It's about 0.34 acres in size. Number of units proposed would be 6. That's a density of 17.6. Just looking at general zoning map history and map around this area, is currently zoned to RTZ. To the north is R4. And you look further north along Bailey Avenue, you have RTZ. You have R2 in the general vicinity. And to the east along Dodge Avenue, there is C2. To the north on Bailey, this little parcel right here, I think you can see the arrow pointed, that was rezoned UGC about 2 months ago. In 2021, this site was rezoned from R2 residential to RTZ. with conditions, subject to parking shall be to the side or rear only and access from the existing alley. In 2021, a request is rezone 513 Dodds Avenue to the east, or is rezoned from R2 to C2. And as I stated a few minutes ago, in 2021 to the north, this parcel was rezoned to UGC to the north of this site with conditions. It's currently a vacant piece of property. To the north of this site's a daycare. Immediately to the north, south, and east and west are single-family detached dwellings. If you go further east along Dodds Avenue, you run into more of the commercial and school uses. This is about 275 feet to the east of Macaulay Avenue. Here's a view of the site. Another view of the site looking down Bailey Avenue towards Macaulay. This is a view north of the site, which is a daycare that's across the street. This is a view west of the site, which you can see some of the single-family detached dwellings that are nearby. And this is immediately abutting the site, which is the east of the site, which is a single-family dwelling. This is a view south of the site, which again are more single-family detached dwellings. This area is in our historic River to Ridge Area 3 plan, which is adopted in 2020. It recommends urban residential, which the primary uses are single-family detached, accessory dwelling units, and 2 to 4 units per lot, and cottage courts up to a maximum of 8. Secondary uses, which are multifamily buildings of 5 to 12 residential units per lot. This proposed use of 6 dwelling units per lot, or actually it's total, I think it's total, right? Per lot, so sorry, it's per lot. So it'd be total 12 would be more of a secondary use. UGC zone permits a variety of commercial uses that are not compatible with adopted plan. The UGC zone allows for 4-story buildings and a variety of commercial uses that are not compatible with adjacent development, form, and land uses. The existing RTZ zone as zone is meant to serve as a residential urban infill tool. The RTZ zone was amended in 2021 and 2022 to permit attached townhouses and up to 4 multi-unit dwellings on one lot with more urban setbacks. The amendment occurred to provide another residential tool instead of rezoning to UGC for mixed-use zones in residential neighborhoods. The existing RTZ zone fulfills the Area 3 plan goals and meets the primary uses of the urban residential place type. So staff recommends to deny this request to rezone to UGC, as the current zoning fulfills the most recent adopted plan recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Go ahead.
So as we are proposing this,
State your name and address for the
Justin Cox, and I'm the property owner at 2500 Bailey. We are requesting the UGC zoning because of the density. We're great with looking at the height of the building not exceeding the 2 stories. No setback requirements we're asking for. But we are looking for more than 4 units. We're actually looking from 6 to 8 units per lot per building. So that is our request. We have spoken with the neighborhood, the lead of the neighborhood organization, and Greg felt very good about that. And then I also spoke with Councilwoman Coonrod, and she gave 2 thumbs up likewise. As you can see, we have no opposition in here. Across the street, UGA was approved a few months ago. If you take 1,600 feet down the street, C&E has built about 7 of these homes to accommodate a higher density level. It would kind of be like a short stroll to a burger. So that's how close it is. That would be our request. And we are a couple of other things that you could know. We're less than 400 feet to a bus stop. We have on-street parking, and we can accommodate the parking inside of that space likewise. So,
thank you. Any questions for the applicant? And I think I asked earlier, and there wasn't any opposition, correct? If you're here in opposition, raise your hand. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Councilman Ludford.
Sir, real quick. Thank you. You said you did have a community meeting, or you talked to neighbors?
I spoke to neighbors,
So
people in the association.
in the association,
Mhm.
and you talked to Councilwoman Coonrod, obviously,
I did.
and you said you would be amenable to a 2-story height restriction?
Mhm.
And this is a complete residential
It is.
product?
No commercial.
We really need to work on UGC. Thank you. That's all I have for
Thank you, sir.
right now.
And then Mr. Farmer.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was going to say that staff did go back and forth and talk about this one a good bit. We feel, similarly that this is a good opportunity for affordable housing, but we just wanted to make sure that this is compatible with the neighborhood. But I agree with some of the sentiment that as we go forward in some of these neighborhoods, we would like to see introduce other housing types.
We have a motion to approve the 2-story limit in height. Mr. Farmer, it has been seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, can staff clarifies it a condition?
Sure.
Do you want to add a condition about residential uses only? Or do you see, because right now,
Question that.
So the motion is for 2.5-story limit only and 2-story limit only and residential use only. And it has been seconded? Okay.
Yes, it was residential and 6 to 8 units. Yes, okay. Sorry, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda, item 17, case 2022-0058, located at 4409 Patton Town Road. It's an application to rezone from M2 to C2. In this case, has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. I love these conditions. I just love them. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? And do you have any questions or concerns? Okay. What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve. That has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I think we've got another one like that in town. We've got a couple of those.
we do.
Where it's like you can only put cats in this building. It's
Well, that
zoned
was
for
very
cats
specific.
only.
That was very specific. This was not that specific.
Well, this one's close. This one's dogs only. And then every once in a while we end up with the one we just had, which is people only. It's great. It's great. And then we had that one before with Alan where it's like all your stuff only self-storage. It's great. Item 18, 2022-0059, located at 6814 Hickson Pike, is an application to rezone from R1 to R3 and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is item 19, 2022-0060, and this is located at 1700 Ottawa Ringgold Road. In this case, has a staff recommendation. It's an application to lift or amend conditions. It has a staff recommendation to approve lifting condition number 1 and amending conditions number 2 and 4. Is there any opposition present?
We do have a hand.
You're in opposition? Okay, and is the applicant present? All right. Mr. Schultz?
Yes, this case was not in your packet. We had to mail this one a little bit later. We were late getting the staff recommendation out on this case, waiting on other partners to provide comments. But again, this is not a rezoning. This is to lift and amend conditions of a zoning case from a couple years ago. This is out in East Brainerd and Ottawa Ringgold Road. It's currently zone C2 with several conditions. And we'll just go through the conditions that the applicant's asking to be lifted or amended. So proposed condition number 1, the reasoning is sidewalks will be installed as part of a larger TDOT plan. The current condition states that concrete sidewalks, minimum width of 5 feet, shall be placed along the interior edge of landscape buffer along Ooltewah Ringgold Road and East Brainerd Road. Sidewalks shall be outside the right-of-way. We had discussions with TDOT. Based on discussions with TDOT and proposed future projects for Ooltewah Ringgold Road and East Brainerd Road, staff recommends to approve lifting these conditions as part of TDOT's widening project, which I believe is slated for 2025. Any sidewalks installed by the developer will be removed and replaced. Sidewalks will be put in along this section of Ooltewah Ringgold Road and East Brainerd as part of their widening project. So staff agrees this condition should be lifted. Proposed amendment to condition number 2. The existing condition is concrete sidewalks, minimum width of 5 feet, shall be placed along all interior and private streets and drives. Proposed language from the applicant: concrete sidewalks, minimum width of 5 feet, shall be installed as necessary to provide pedestrian connectivity throughout the interior of the development. Staff recommendation is to approve a different wording of the condition as follows. ADA compliant sidewalks, minimum width of 5 feet, shall be installed interior to the site to provide pedestrian connections which have safe, direct, and convenient access, connecting public streets and parking lots to primary building entrances and all other uses in the development that allow public access. Pedestrian access between building and parking areas must be physically separated from drive aisles except when crossing a drive aisle. So staff recommends to amend this condition, but it is different what the applicant's requesting. Condition number 4, the existing condition states existing natural vegetation and trees shall be preserved and protected for a distance of 80 feet from the south boundary. Retention ponds are permitted within this area. The proposed rewording of this condition by the applicant is a proposed 20-foot wide landscape buffer with 2 staggered rows of trees planted 15 foot on center shall be required along the south boundary for a distance of approximately 360 feet east of the Ooltewah Ringgold Road right-of-way. A proposed 45-foot wide landscape buffer with 3 staggered rows of trees planted 15 foot on center shall be required along the remainder of the south boundary up to the limits of the required wetlands protection buffer. Retention pond or ponds are also permitted within this area. Staff agrees with the recommendation and recommends to approve as suggested by the applicant on the amended condition. What was the same? Oh, sorry. Shall not be permitted. Yeah, sorry. It is a little different in that the last section where the applicant's retention ponds are also permitted within this area. Staff is recommending retention ponds shall not be permitted in the buffer area. So it is a little different. And finally, number 5, this is all improvements on East Brainerd Road shall require approval from the Hamilton County Engineering Department. Improvements include the following. Right-of-way in the amount of 40 feet from the center line shall be dedicated to Hamilton County government. The existing drainage ditch line shall be relocated as required to the south to allow a minimum 4-foot paved shoulder. The drainage ditch may be piped along the shoulder or in the areas adjacent to driveways to allow additional backfilled areas. And finally, C, an eastbound right turn lane, minimum 100 foot, and westbound left turn lane, minimum 100 foot, into the proposed development will be required during construction of phase 1. The proposed condition, as requested by the applicant, is the developer shall dedicate right-of-way in the amount of 40 feet from the center line of East Brainerd Road to Hamilton County government. So basically, B and C will be removed. Staff recommends to deny condition number 5. The amendment to condition 5 reduces the condition to only dedicating 40 foot of right-of-way to Hamilton County and eliminates the specific stormwater requirements and the requirement for installing turn lanes. The proposed amendment, condition 5, does not provide any mitigation related to required improvements. So those are the conditions asked to be lifted and amended. So again, number 1, staff recommends to approve lifting condition number 1, approve differently from the applicant as far as condition number 2, approve differently in terms of condition number 4, which is the last wording about retention ponds. And finally, condition number 5, staff recommends to deny lifting that condition. And I guess we can go through these however you want to, one at a time or however you so choose.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Mr. Price.
Thank you. Mike Price, MAP Engineer. So there are 4 conditions. I don't think we have any issues with regards to item number 1 as it relates to concrete sidewalks. We asked for this condition to be lifted because Woodwall Ringgold Road and East Brainerd Road both are in the process of being widened. Plans are being prepared. They will start purchasing right-of-way towards the end of this year. So we saw if we built the right-of-way, it was going to be torn out in a few years, and that really did not make any sense, especially since there was no connectivity that was going to be offered to any of the residents nearby at this point. So what we see here is that TDOT will simply be the ones to install the right-of-way as part of their project, or install the sidewalks as part of their project. So that's when it will go in. So that made perfect sense. I think staff and myself are in agreement. Item number 2, I agree with staff with changing of the wording except for the last sentence, which says pedestrian access between building and parking areas must be physically separated from drive aisles except when crossing a drive aisle. That is a little over restrictive. I think I can meet every bit of the first statements. We'll make it safe. We're going to make connectivity occur, but the last statement needs to go because I can't always necessarily provide a landscape area right next to a sidewalk. So it's overly restrictive and ties my hands. So I'd ask for that last statement to be stricken, and then we should be good to go there. With regards to the 4th, which is the condition as it relates to vegetation to the south of us. So the property to the south of us previously was zoned agricultural at the time. It has since been rezoned. I think it's a PUD now. As a high density development. We had an 80-foot buffer there at the time. There was 1 residential property owner at the time. Now the property has since been sold and John and Kathleen Crockett own the property to the south of us. Now, the condition previously allowed us to put 2 retention ponds in that buffer of 80 feet. But again, the property was just a single residential use. It's now been rezoned to have a high density residential use. At some point in the future, that's probably what the plans would be at some point, I would imagine. What we've asked for is to reduce this to a 45-foot planted buffer and 20 foot as it relates to our first pond in the front. Now, if you look at normal C2, it's only a 20-foot buffer. We are more than still exceeding the buffer requirements of what is typically required of C2. So we're just asking for a reduction from 80 to 45 feet in the area that is highlighted there on the plans where we're going to plant it. And we're still building the 2 ponds, which was previously allowed. So that's the ask as it relates to that area. Lastly is with regards to East Brainerd Road. What staff may not know is that East Brainerd Road is going to be lowered 6 to 8 feet. There's no point in us doing all this stuff that's going to be completely torn out. Now, we still have to go through approval process, both with TDOT and staff, and we'll figure out what the appropriate plan is. But I would again go back to the ask, which is that for condition number 5 is that we simply dedicate, which we'd always agreed to, is 40 foot of right of way. So we're not asking to give up less land than what we previously agreed to. We're just stating there's no reason for us to do all of these conditions here when it's going to be all torn out anyway. Currently, plans are underway. We submitted those to the Land Disturbance Department, County Engineering, TDOT. Whatever comments we get back, we'll address, we'll do. So I think number 5, we would ask that we would be granted exactly what we've requested, which is a 40-foot right-of-way. Simply be the only condition. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Let me have a question. And I think Brian can allude to this. And I think this was some of the concern. Well, I guess I've got a question. Some of it was the concern from staff on the conditions. And I don't disagree in them being read again, but that they may be a little bit too specific because of a transition. And so I may be amenable to rewording them to basically say you've got to get approval, obviously, from Hamilton County for that. But I guess my only question or concern, and I understand the grading changes, but again, the concern with lifting the condition to not doing anything on that East Brainerd Road section would be prior to TDOT coming in and if they're not scheduled to 2025, I guess what needs to be handled is the transition prior to that. That makes sense.
I agree with that, but here's what I would say. we're going to have to go through this process. I've not tied your hands by these conditions. You can come up and staff can come up with whatever conditions that we're going to come up with that we still have to address. So I don't see that the county has been hamstrung in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
I think I would be amenable for that section or that condition 5 to say something to that you'll dedicate that the development will dedicate 40 feet of right of way and conform to any requirements by Hamilton County Engineering for East Brenner Road section, something like that. And then it's not so specific relative to drainage and all that other stuff, but there will be there. And again, my concern is there was an expectation that some things happened during phase 1 of that development. So I don't want to now just say we're going to wait until TDOT comes in there when we're not really sure exactly. I know they have obligated for right of way and they're in plan development, but that would be that's my only comment. So I'd be amenable to maybe a change on condition 5.
And those conditions, those were developed at a time when nobody knew when East Brenner Road or Ooltewah Ringo Road were planning on being developed. So that's where those conditions were born out of. Now that we have a date specific as plans are moving forward, that's why the ask is to be relieved. Now we know specifics.
Good afternoon. My name is Bassam Isa. Just want to bring the fact that we will open middle of 23. So the period between middle of 23 and 25 is not that long of a time on the East Brainerd thing. So it's not really anything we do by the time we do it is going to be gone. So that's basically what I'm saying.
Come on in.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathleen Crockett. I reside at 1502 Ooltewah Ringgold Road. And our concern or objection that we wanted to raise today just relates to condition number 4. And our request respectfully is to maintain the original condition number 4, which again read, keeping the existing natural vegetation and trees shall be preserved and protected for a distance of 80 feet from the south boundary, and then the retention ponds permitted within that area. We do own the parcel immediately adjacent to the south. It is a single family home right now. It's actually an old farmhouse that we've been trying to preserve that dates back to the 1880s. While Mr. Price is correct that was rezoned in the last couple of years from agriculture to for a PUD. We actually came and objected to that at length, but it was approved. When that developer's project fell through, we decided to purchase the property to protect the area from being developed and to protect the homes, the old home, 2 homes there. There's one on another adjacent property further to the south. So that's again, so while it was rezoned for a PUD, there are no plans. There's not a PUD there today, and there are no plans for the indefinite future for one to be developed there. And I'm sure Mr. Price misspoke a bit when he said all he's asking for is to decrease from 80 to 45. That's just on half of it. So the other half, it's decreasing. The request is to decrease from, as I understand it, from 80 feet to 20 feet. I understand that technically that's all that the code requires based on the adjacency of the 2 zoning districts. But it's very similar, I think, to what Commissioner Ledford brought up for the Lester Lane project, to have requesting an undisturbed buffer of 50 feet. While that may not technically, something a lot less they could have gotten there, I suppose. So again, the idea is to request, there are still is a good bit of natural vegetation and high trees there that have probably been there for 100 years. And while I understand there's a lot of scrub brush in there that may not look so attractive, there are still quite a few high trees there that would be lost in what they're planning. And then a complete view from a single family home to this entire new shopping center. So again, just asking for some, that what was originally proposed and agreed upon to remain in place to protect that property from noise, light pollution, and visual, screening and buffer. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for the opposition? Thank you. Mr. Preston.
So I'm going to just gravitate to the last issue, which is this. Again, an 80-foot buffer, which is 4 times what is required, is a little excessive, I believe. What I do think is the right plan is to go to a 45-foot buffer for the portion that's shown. The current zoning regulations allow us to build these 2 ponds, and they've been submitted and approved. If you really read the regulations, it doesn't even require us to landscape around the ponds. It just says 80-foot buffer, period, and then that suffices for your buffer requirements. We don't think that's the right plan for the Crockett's, nor do we think it's the right plan for us either, truthfully. The best plan, I think, is to put the buffer, plant the buffer there along the backside of the pond. So if you will, there's a hole in the current condition as it relates to the 80-foot. And then go into a 45-foot buffer through there. I think that's the right plan to plant those trees through there, 3 rows, not 2 rows, which is typically required. If there's some trees that we can save in through there that work with the plan, we'll be happy to work with the Crockett's to do that. And I think we could probably work on that between now and county commission. So if there's some of those that are worthwhile saving, so be it. We can, again, I'm not here to just cut trees down to plant new ones to say everything's great. So we can save some that makes sense. I'll get with the landscape architect and we can get that squared away. But I think 80 to 45 is not a huge ask, especially given that we're going to plant it. And it is not the most aesthetically pleasing area, if you will. And I don't really want a scrub area backing up to a nice development. I'd rather have a landscape planted, maintained buffer between us and them. I think that's better for everybody. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Mr. Price? Mr. Lynn?
Yeah, let me just be clear. So the existing condition is an 80-foot undisturbed, but there's no distinction between whether the detention ponds can go in that 80-foot. Is that what I heard you say?
No, the current requirement is 80-foot buffer, but I have the ability to build 2 retention ponds in there. And that's what we have done as far as the approved plans go, which basically reflect on the drawing that I've given you.
Okay. And so the change in that would be this revision that pulls those or allows to have some landscaping between those detention ponds and that property line.
That's correct. And it does reduce it, but there's a trade-off as I see, because we're now providing landscaping that previously was not required.
Correct. You got a 20 and a 45 is the, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, since there's no motion, and this is fairly complicated, which I'm guessing is why nobody wants to jump on making a motion, we'll go through these one at a time, and I'll just entertain a motion in regards to each condition. So, Mr. Schultz, if you've got condition 1 pulled up there.
Sure, it's pulled up on screen now.
And so the motion will be made in regards to condition 1, 2, and we'll just take action on each one independent, if that's okay with everybody. All right. The applicant has requested lifting condition number 1. What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve. It has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The applicant has requested to lift condition number 2. Staff has recommended what's in front of us here to amend it. What's the will of the commission? What is the motion to approve? The staff recommendation or the applicant's request? Sorry. Applicant's request or applicant's request is to.
No, I was just going to clarify that. I think the applicant was good with everything except for the last sentence. The pedestrian access between building and park areas must be physically separated from drive aisles except when crossing a drive aisle. That's correct.
Yes, sir.
So what's the motion exactly in regards to condition number 2?
I can make a motion. Are you?
Well, Weil made a motion to approve, but I don't know what it is to, whether it's to approve the staff recommendation or to approve the lifting of conditions. Okay. Is there a second? Okay, so we have a motion to amend condition number 2 to what's in front of us with the last sentence being deleted. Is that right? Thank you. And it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Applicants requested to lift condition number 4. Staff's recommendation is here in front of us. What's the will of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, just to be clarified, that's to amend condition and not lift.
No, the staff's, you're saying applicant requested to amend it? Gotcha.
Yes.
Yes, you're right. Thank you.
And I believe that, Mr. Chairman, the main difference here is the retention ponds permitted or not permitted. Staff is saying not permitted. Is that right, Brian?
That's correct. That's the main difference. Staff agreed with the applicant. The only difference were the applicant says retention ponds are also permitted within this buffer area. Staff is saying retention ponds shall not be permitted within this buffer area. That's the main difference, that last sentence.
Let me just clarify. So I'm assuming this drawing was in response to the staff recommendation.
That's what we submitted to the
prior
staff.
to.
That's what we submitted is our application to staff.
Staff, and remember the existing condition as worded today is existing natural vegetation and trees shall be preserved and protected for a distance of 80 feet from the south boundary. Retention ponds are also permitted within this area. That's the existing condition.
I have a question, Chairman.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, tell me again the benefits of a planned buffer versus a natural buffer in this spot.
So natural, of course, can be any number of different things, from a nice planted, or excuse me, a nice area with a lot of pristine trees to a lot of scrub and vines and poison ivy and oak and just items that are not conducive typically to what you would want adjacent to residential or commercial developments. So what we see here is an opportunity to plant, maintain a buffer that provides screening and is aesthetically pleasing to both sides that would look at it.
So is one more conducive to potential hazards being natural versus being planned for the general public? Does that make sense?
So the problem with natural is sometimes you can get big gaping holes that exist in your view shed, especially in the wintertime. So what we're trying to do is plug all the holes by putting in screening that uses evergreen trees in through here, as much as planting deciduous trees. So it creates a screening. Right now, there's areas out in through there that are just honestly, if you really were to give it a definition, you call it overgrown. and unkempt. And we don't really think that that is really in anyone's best interest.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how many, you not having the landscape architect look at it, what kind of number would you rate? How many trees could be saved? Large trees, large caliber trees.
I know there's one oak that I would say we probably should look at trying to save. There are maybe 3 to 4 others. Again, without walking it and then going through that process, which again, we can amend the plan if it so will this body.
I tell you what interests me is getting together with the adjacent property owner, walking the property and marking these trees before you get to county commission. And I think it's a great idea, working together and then making this buffer actually better than what it is now. And if that's a commitment that I think if you can make, and I think the adjacent property owners, I don't know if I get a head nod from them or not, but I think that is a great idea about working together. That would be something I'd be much interested in going towards passing it on to county commission.
Okay.
Mr. Schultz, can you go back to that
wanted
condition?
I'm sorry, I just want to say that we also behind that buffer, there'll be oak trees, another lane of oak trees all along. But we're open to saving whatever trees we can.
Save the trees.
Mr. Lehman.
I guess just in looking at this drawing, you could almost submit this drawing and meet the existing condition by just taking out all your landscaping and not grading within that 80 feet, right? I mean, it almost appears to me that if you save the really nice stuff and you plant this buffer as requested and based on your request, that you're improving the area. I mean, is that?
Except adjacent to the ponds to the south, we're grading all the way to the property line in order to put those ponds in.
But
So-
you could do that in the prior condition too, correct?
But that's why we're saying.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking with you. It almost appears that you could do what you're, I make a motion to approve staff recommendation on the buffer.
Except
Go ahead.
ponds still need to be allowed in the buffer, if I might.
Well, it doesn't appear on this drawing that they're in the buffer.
They are. They're within the 80 feet. If you draw 80 feet off the south line, then they're fall squarely inside that 80 feet.
Thought we were reducing the buffers.
Correct.
Well, let me clarify though. The motion is reducing the buffers, correct?
But it says you cannot put the ponds inside the area. So what I would say is if anything should be passed, I would ask that it be the plan submitted, because there you got specific, here's a plan. So there's no ambiguity as it relates to what we're doing with the ponds.
Let me rescind my motion just for a minute.
Mr. Schultz, can you go back to the motion or the condition? We can take no action on condition number 4. Correct? I mean, we
I
can.
guess taking no action means it's denied.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, if it's denied here, it can,
Still goes off county
there's some information I
Mr.
think
Reuter.
that they can do before county commission.
I guess the question I would have is, what does it mean when it says retention ponds shall not be permitted in this area? What area are we talking
we're talking about
about?
the landscape buffer, the 20 foot and
The 20
45
foot?
and the 45.
Okay, then I'm good with it. If you're saying that this plan meets it, then I'm good with that, if that's what I'm hearing.
We can add retention ponds shall not be permitted in the landscape buffer areas to clarify if that works.
The 20 and 45.
45.
Then we're good. Sorry. Just that helps.
The applicant has said that they're good with the proposed condition,
With the RPA's recommendation, yes.
the staff recommendation.
It's clarified. We got it.
I make a motion to approve staff recommendation
So on
with
condition 4,
the clarification I think Mr. Schultz mentioned.
we have some clarification made to staff recommendation and a motion to approve. And it was properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And in regards to condition number 5, What's the will of the commission?
I make a motion. Going to basically restate number 5 to state that developers shall dedicate 40 feet of right of way and meet all requirements for improvements on East Burn Road as approved by the Hamilton County Engineering Department.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Schultz, can you have security remove Mike Price?
Just 4 conditions.
We can.
Pretty simple. Appreciate the time.
Do I just press a button? Do I press this button? Is this the one that gets security?
Probably so, pretty quickly. I don't know, Mike's hair's getting long. He may take them out.
Is he going out? Yeah, he's on his way out. I'm gonna just hold off on that. All right.
Mr. Chairman, we'll work to try to, on another, next time we have a situation like that with a lot of those conditions, to make sure we try to get as much clarification before the meeting as possible, because I feel like we could have done a better job. Sorry for that. Clarification with the applicant and between staff.
Thank you, everybody. 21 on our agenda is mandatory referral 2022-0062, and this is located at the 2100 block of East 26th Street, and it's a mandatory referral for right-of-way closure and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 22, case 2022-0063, located at 1501 East 18th Street, is an application to rezone from R2 to UGC, and staff is recommended to deny the applicant's request and approve RTZ residential townhouse zero lot line zone with conditions. Is there any opposition? Is the applicant present? Are you familiar with the staff's recommendation? And do you agree with it or do you oppose it? Okay, thank you. We have a motion to approve the staff's recommendation, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we've got a handful here. Let's see, just these 3, 23, 24, 25, all one applicant, different addresses, but in the same area. Is that right?
That's correct. Different address, same area, and we do have 2 denies and 1 approved.
Right. Okay. So mandatory referral 2022-0064, 65, and 66 are the application numbers, located at 1600 block of Brown Street, 1600 block of East 28th Street, 2800, 2900 block of South Hickory Street. Staff is recommended to deny item 23 and 25 and approve item number 24. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? All right. Mr. Schultz, can you take us through all 3?
Sure. 2022-64 against abandonment of public right of way. It's currently on the M1. It's in the 1600 block of Brown Street, as you can see on your screen. This request was abandoned back in, let's see, what year was that? 2008, and it had a condition on that abandonment that applicant must complete construction within 18 months from the date of approval of city council. That never happened, so therefore that condition on the abandonment reverted back to it not being effective. We rely heavily on transportation department comments on these requests. It's clear from the site plan the right-of-way could be used to achieve a significant private interest, facilitating industrial expansion. It does, however, impede future public use in perpetuity. Watauga Street would become a 650-foot long dead end, lacking proper IFC turnaround. The right-of-way is also classified as Tier 1 right-of-way, which requires a suitable replacement per the city's adopted abandonment policy. Despite the prior abandonment in 2008, the reverter prompts us to review this case through current policies and does not find that the two align. So staff recommends to deny this request because there's no suitable replacement and at this time. 65, staff recommends to approve the abandonment of this request against right-of-way abandonment on the 1600 block of East 28th Street. There is a significant private interest has been demonstrated in this case. It is clear that the right-of-way abandonment would clean up the right-of-way edge in this location where it widens out at the mid-block. There is not a foreseeable public need in this excess right-of-way, so staff recommends to approve this request, which is case 2022-65. And finally, case 2022-66. Again, this is abandonment public right-of-way, currently zoned M1. It's in the 2600, 2800 blocks of South Hickory Street. Transportation comments, a significant private interest is demonstrated in this case. However, despite its generous 80-foot wide right-of-way, South Hickory Street and Cleo Avenue both offer a continuously generous width from East 23rd Street at the north to South Orchard Knob Avenue at the south. From their CDOT or Transportation's initial review, we don't find no prior abandonments, which decreased its width along the frontage. Before abandonments could be considered along the street, setting a precedent for others to come, the city would request further evaluation to help ensure that there are no foreseeable public needs in the right-of-way for other city services along this section of the right-of-way. So staff recommends to deny this request. So we got 2 denies and 1 approve.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Ms. Shepherd.
We'll go through the approval first. That is a section that's currently being used as a parking lot.
I wouldn't.
Okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, just cover 23 and 25.
Brown Street is our major concern. We're proposing to do a building expansion. The applicant owns both sides of the right of way. And so that building expansion would go across the right of way. As Mr. Schultz said, it was previously approved in 2008. They did have a timeline on that. The reason why they didn't go through with the expansion was because that's when the economy dropped, 2008, 2009. They did do some of the improvements. They added a ramp in the right of way to one of their existing buildings, and they also have gated this off. So it's been gated from traffic since 2008, 2009. They were having people that would cut through on Watauga Street across Brown to get back on Hickory. This is an active manufacturing site. They do also own the property on the other side of Watauga, that big, large tract. And so they have work trucks, vehicles going back and forth in this area. And so it's pretty dangerous to have vehicles cutting through on Brown Street to get to South Hickory. So that not approving that is a big deal to the applicant. The third request is for South Hickory. It is an 80-foot right-of-way. It's currently fenced off, and they're currently using that area. On either side to the south, there is United Intertech. It is currently loading docks. I don't see the road being improved on that end. If you go to the north of 28th Street, there is a right turn lane, and it's also kind of blocked off with manufacturing. So as far as making improvements to the right of way for a continuous strip, I think it's very unlikely. In addition, the 20-foot portion that we are requesting is elevationally disconnected from the right of way. It's higher up. And so that also provides some disconnect on why we should have that. I think Tennessee American said they had a water line in that area. We would be willing to dedicate any kind of easements that we needed.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? All right, we'll take,
I've got two.
go ahead.
First one, so if there's a water line or other utilities potentially in that, I'm assuming that's 80 feet and y'all are requesting a portion of that. So if there's potentially private utilities or public utilities in that, why wouldn't that just stay? Are y'all expanding
right
into that
close-
area?
So the utilities are closer to the actual road edge. And so we would reduce the portion of the right of way that we're taking is not that portion down there. I don't have exact numbers. We're only requesting 20 feet of the 80. So it would still be a 60-foot right of way.
Okay. And I got a question for Brian. Can you go back to that resolution or that, I guess, that council ordinance on that language? Okay, so it does say complete construction, so obviously they never recorded the abandonment, never completed construction, even though they did a ramp and fencing.
So that only applies to Brown Street.
Yes.
No, I know. My question's on Brown Street now, and so I was just curious that I don't know. Do we typically put reversions in here for right-of-way abandonments?
Well, it's not really a reversion. That condition was never met.
Well, I know, but there's a reversion because it reverts back to the city if that condition isn't met.
And that's why we no longer put conditions now.
Okay.
Transportation Department can put conditions and council can put conditions.
I'm just curious that if it wasn't important in 2008 and you gave it away for expansion, I'm assuming the policy changed.
Policy changed.
Okay.
Policy changed I think 2012, 16, something like that. That's the.
But I guess the point is adding a ramp and gating it off did not fulfill, at least did not fulfill this item number 2. Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Brian, for South Hickory, do you have the photographs of the site from a street view? You don't have anything like that?
No.
Just for reference, where the existing fence line is where we're ending our right-of-way request. So everything that is outside, basically outside the fence and down the hill and all the utilities, that is still staying public right-of-way. We're only asking for the part that we're already using now, which is higher up in elevation than the road. So I guess I misspoke when I said we would give Tennessee American an easement. It's at the bottom, at the street level, where their utilities are located. There's nothing up in the portion that we're requesting as far as utilities.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the city council, I'm glad Commissioner Lehman brought that up. Maybe someone can answer that question. I thought we, according to TCA, we were not allowed to do revisions or reverting back to anything in our action. I thought that was.
That is on zoning cases. Again, this is not a zoning case. This was a condition that was placed on it by council. That basically said, applicant must complete construction in 18 months from the date of approval of this council, of city council level. That never happened. So I guess it's a legal question. Did that ordinance become invalid because that condition was never met?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going, but I don't have a CA here to answer that. So.
At that time, I think there was also an alley abandonment that was approved, but the condition wasn't placed on that. And so that alley the 2 alleys that are within this section on Brown Street, those have both been abandoned and have become absorbed as part of the property for the applicant.
Did you say it's been fenced off since 2008?
Yes.
Mr. Farmer.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The one thing that Ms. Shepherd said that I noticed during the presentation that I was concerned with would be the safety of these people if this was open and people driving and access through there as it relates to Brown Street. So I think in my mind, if it was good enough in 2008 and they've got a project that they're moving their business forward, it's good enough today. And additional safety concern on 2022-0064, I would make a motion to approve the applicant's request.
We have a motion that has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed?
And let me just clarify that's on the Brown Street, correct?
No.
I mean,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Motion carries. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. 24, we have a staff recommendation to approve on MR. We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And on 66.
Can I ask the applicant a question here? So is the reason why this was sort of, I mean, is there any improvements, buildings or anything in this right of way closure request along that, or is it just because it's already being used by the applicant?
We will be making improvements. I've got a site plan that was submitted with,
Okay, well, that complicates my motion then.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, talking to TDOT or CDOT, some of the things they felt a temporary use permit would be valid at this location.
so the area shaded on the plan is the part of the right of way that we would be abandoning.
So let me ask a question to Brian. I think you brought it up. So staff mentioned not to recommend abandonment of right of way because they need to evaluate that entire length of right of way before they just abandon a portion. And are you saying that the applicant can potentially do this under a use permit?
That's the comment we received from Transportation Department. They're not here today to help with this, but proposal does not meet the City of Chattanooga right-of-way closure and abandonment policy. A temporary use permit could potentially alleviate the parking laydown area encroachment, was their comments.
There will be a fence and a parking lot installed in that area. It'll be improved from what the current condition is with the building expansion.
But I think the information you got, Brian, was that could be potentially be done in a use permit.
According to TDOT or Transportation Department comments, yes, that's what they provided us.
In regards to mandatory referral 2022-0066, what's the will of the commission?
I'm gonna make a motion to deny that based on staff, and then maybe there's some more information prior to council, but I make a motion to deny.
We have a motion to deny, and it is properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 2022-0067. It's located at 130408 and 12 Greenwood Drive. And it's an application to rezone from R1 to R2. It has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? What's the will of the commission? We have a motion to approve. I need a second. And it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item is 2022-0068, located at 6238 Bonnie Oaks Drive, and it's an application rezone from M1. I'm sorry, rezone from R2 and C2 to M1, and it has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? So this applicant's familiar with our procedures. I mean, Dave Gardner's been in here, I think, a time or two. I wonder if maybe we just ran long. I didn't entertain a motion to defer. I'd like to hear from the applicant. I mean, the applicant's not present. I mean, and we have run a little bit, some of this is taking a little bit longer. So
I'll rescind my motion to deny and make a motion to defer 30 days.
Thank you. We do have a motion to defer for 30 days, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, on this next case, we need to There's no opposition here. We need to talk about this case. I think that the request may have changed a little bit and bring you up to speed on what we've learned since the staff report was written.
Okay. On case 2022-0069, located at 4408 Shelbourne Drive. It's an application to rezone C2 convenience commercial zone and R4 special zone with conditions to R4 special zone. And staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Okay. Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, this is case 2022-69. This is a request to rezone from R4 special zone and C2 convenience commercial zone with conditions to R4 special zone for proposed use of a quadruplex. It's 0.6 acres in size, total of 4 units and a density of 6.6. On the zoning map, you can see it's this property highlighted in red is split zoning designation with conditions of being R4 and a little sliver being C2. To the north is C2, to the west is C2, to the east is C2, and to the south of this site, immediately abutting this site is R4 and then R1. Again, this site was rezoned in 1992 from R1 to R4 special zone and C2 convenience commercial zone with conditions. It had basically 5 conditions. Structures being located at a 25-foot setback line. All parking being located at the rear of the structures. No apartments. Revised legal description, and all existing easements shall be retained. Those were the 5 conditions that were placed on this property. It's currently a vacant piece of property. To the north along Highway 58 is commercial. To the south is single family. To the west is single family, a church, and commercial. And to the east is single family. Here's a view of the site. It's a vacant piece of property. This is adjacent to the site, which is a single family dwelling, which is zoned R4. This is adjacent to the site across the street. And this is just another view showing you how far, the site from Highway 58. This is in the Highway 58 Community Land Use Plan, which recommends low intensity residential. A quadplex or R4 would be appropriate in this location. Staff originally looked at this and recommended approval of the rezoning subject to 2 conditions: residential uses only and a maximum of 4 residential units. Since our staff review of zoning, we talked to the adjacent applicant to the north, which is commercial, which is C2. They have plans underway to construct something on that site. Because that C2 abuts a C2 zone to the south, there is no landscape requirements. If this property is rezoned to R4, landscape buffer requirements kick in. So the property owner to the north would have to put in a 20-foot landscape buffer. The R4 zone, this property is being rezoned from R4 and C2 to R4, would also be required to put in a landscape buffer between the C2 and this property. So in essence, you're going to have a 40-foot buffer along this shared property line. So this applicant would have to put in 20-foot buffer. Applicant to the north would have to put in a 20-foot buffer. We had a couple of discussions going back and forth how that should happen. I think at the end of the day, I believe the applicant's here to ask not to rezone it, but simply to go back and lift those 5 conditions on the property. That way the landscape buffers would not kick in and would not apply to both property owners. So I can answer any questions, but yeah. And the landscape regulations do not kick in for 1 family, 2 family, and 3 family. This is a quadplex and it's R4. It's required to put in a 20-foot landscape buffer abutting the C2. And the C2 would also be required. So you could go BOZA and try to get variances.
Mr. Farmer.
This one's for the record book right here.
It's a good one.
This is a good one. So if I own a piece of C2 property and my neighbor gets rezoning, then I have to go and build a buffer.
If he had already pulled building permits, if the adjacent property owner is under construction and pulled building permits, no, he would not. No building permits have been issued to the property to the north. They received the zoning notification. They've already drawn up their land use plans or development plans, which didn't include that buffer. If this gets rezoned 3 months from now, in 4 months, they go in and get building permits, they would be required to put in a landscape buffer. It's all about timing.
Okay.
And so the biggest issue is they're putting in a 20-foot buffer. This applicant is also putting in a 20-foot buffer. So you got a 40-foot buffer along that shared property line between R4 and C2.
Can they split it?
That'd be through BOZA. It's going to require 20 foot and 20 foot. And I think the applicant can speak. He's reached out to the property owner to the north, and I think they've discussed. You can still, by lifting these conditions in the C2 and R4 zone, he can still build a quadplex on that property. And I think he originally had talked about lifting the conditions instead of rezoning it. And I'll let him speak.
Yeah, that's essentially it. I actually applied for lift conditions like originally, and then it was recommended to just rezone the property, which would also lift conditions, which is only a 20 or 30 foot section of the property that is zone C2. And another alternative, which the engineer brought up, was to rezone it or rezone all of it except a 10-foot portion to R4, which would lift the conditions and meet our goals, and also serve the adjacent property owner and not impact their development. So,
But to be clear, what you would like to see this commission do is just lift the 5 conditions.
yes, that would be ideal. Yes.
Okay. And staff is recommended to approve the rezoning with conditions.
Yeah, we'd had 2 conditions of residential use only and a maximum of 4 residential units.
Gotcha.
Chairman.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. So Brian, given this, you indicated a minute ago, you needed to comment on this, given new information. What would be staff's general view, given the requests now?
I mean, that little sliver of C2, I think staff would recommend approving the conditions. Number 5, all existing easements shall be retained. That's pretty standard language that we put in the conditions. Number 4, revise legal description. There must have been some legal issue back then on the description from 92. Why I include that condition, I don't know. We wouldn't have no problem with that.
Right.
No apartments, that may be one we want to potentially keep, or you can condition it to a quadplex. You could probably amend that condition. We did talk about during staff review, if this went R4, about locating parking to the rear of this site. But what's the hardship? What's the nuisance? You already have adjacent parking lots, large parking lots to the south and to the east. So why keep that? And then the setback, you have to comply with setbacks in the R4 zone anyway. And according to the applicant's site plan, he's needing reduction in setbacks, and the R4 zone would provide that relief.
So if we lifted conditions and placed a quadplex, is that what you're trying to build?
The quadplex, yeah.
Use only, that would cure this?
Yes. That way the C2 would be conditioned to quadplex only.
I make that motion.
We have a motion and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Do we have somebody in opposition or? Oh, sorry.
He's the next door neighbor, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, item 29, case 2022-0070, located at 100 West Bell Avenue. It is an application to rezone C2 Convenience Commercial Zone to ECX3 Urban Edge Commercial Mixed Use Zone, and it has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? You're here in opposition? Is that right?
Yeah.
Just making sure we're clear. Is the applicant present? Okay. Mr. Schultz.
This is case 2022-70 over North Chattanooga off West Bell Avenue. It's currently zone C2, convenience commercial zone with no conditions. The request is to go to form-based code, urban edge, commercial mixed use, 3-story zone for commercial establishment, which is already in operation. There's no zoning. Screen went off again. Sorry about that. There's been no recent zoning history for this site. There have been adjacent zoning requests in 12, request to rezone 111 West Bell Avenue, which approximately 180 feet to the west of the site was rezoned from R1 to C2. And then in 2017, rezoned at 530 North Market Street from R2 to ECX3 Urban Edge, was approved through City Council. So it has been precedent for form-based code in this area. Go back to the zoning map. To the north is R1, to the south is R1, to the west is R1, to the east is R1. But if you go 2 parcels over, you do see we have form-based code zoning, which is ECX3. At the end of the day, really, this is about a beer code issue. In the beer code, chapter 575, it says the sale of beer or other beverages of alcoholic content for consumption on the premises must be within 500 feet, or should not be within 500 feet or 200 feet for consumption off the premises. Certain zones are exempt from that distance requirements, which is the downtown form-based code, or UGC. Adjacent uses include residential, single family to the north, single family to the southwest, and single family to the south. And then there's a church to the east here. So this applicant already has beer sales occurring on the site, which for off premises. In order to have on consumption premises, you must be further than 200 feet away from a church. This, of course, is not. This is the site itself, which is the North River Corner Market. Another view of the site. This is a view of the site. Across the street is residential. This is in a North Shore plan, which recommends urban single-family residential, which is adopted in 2007. Development form is intended to promote high-density infill single-family residential on lots smaller than 7,500 square foot, typically patio homes. The use of on-street parking and service alleys and rear loading garages is encouraged. The plan also provides specific recommendations for Bell Avenue. The plan states that portions of Bell Avenue that are close to primary commercial streets can retain their commercial character. The commercial site is an existing building at a corner and serves the surrounding neighborhood. Staff looked at this and recommended to approve. The property is currently zoned C2 convenience commercial zone, which allows for a similar range of uses to the proposed ECX3 zone. This would be different in that it could potentially, if ever destroyed or removed or torn down, to build a 3-story building on this property based on the ECX3 zone. The rezoning would continue to allow commercial, but also allow retail, multifamily uses, but introduce more specific design requirements to the area. Also, this site meets criteria 1 and 2 of the form-based code expansion, since it is approximately 200 feet from the existing form-based code district to the east. So staff recommends to approve C2 to ECX3 zone this location.
Thank you, Brian. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Brian, go back to your map showing the zones, please, sir. Okay, and the nearest form-based code is a block away?
Not even a block, probably 2 parcels, 2 lots, if you will. The C2 zone sits right here. This is that site. If you go 2 parcels to the east towards Market Street, that's where the ECX3 zone begins. Now then, if you look to the southwest, it's further away. You have ERA2.
I received a lot of emails on this one, Brian, asking for a deferral. And I think that also I heard from Chairman Henderson about a deferral for a little more conversation on this. And given the content or the intent of the use, I think that would be a wise item to consider. I'll just stop there and pause, but I think it would be a wise idea to have a little more conversation on this.
We'll hear from the applicant first and then the opposition.
Yes, my name is Mark Hopkins. My interest in this was simply, that what would solve it would be to make that whole area the little wedge downtown district, and then I wouldn't have to apply for the different form-based code. But essentially there is if you go to the map, the Goddard School is that large building on West Bell and North Market. There is a restaurant that opened after I opened that serves alcohol in the building where the children are. And from the deck of the restaurant, you can see the children's playground. It's just an unfair competitive edge. I'm not trying to,
mess up the neighborhood or anything. The market's been there since 1940. I'm just trying to keep the market alive. It has been a difficult 16, 18 months. I'm still trying to look for that first profitable month. I've lost business to the new place that opened that can serve alcohol. A lot of my clients walking distance. They're all people that walk in the neighborhood. A lot of people walk their dogs. Half the time I'm in there cooking and I hear someone start to open a beer and I've got to run out and stop them because they don't understand why they can't open the beer and have it there like they can everywhere else. So I'm simply trying just to comply with the beer code and the beer board and not get in trouble with them. I thought this was the easiest avenue to go. I have no problem. I mean, I'd love for it to be approved today, but if it's a defer that we need for 30 days so I can meet with the concerned citizen in the neighborhood, I'll do it. A lot of the concerns they've expressed in the email, I sent out the information that Brian sent to me that answered a bunch of their questions about how tall the building could be or so forth and so on. They had a lot of what if questions, and those are things I can't answer. I don't know what's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now. And that seems to be a lot of where their concerns are. The other thing was, I think the other concern was traffic. That's one of the most potentially deadly intersections in the city because no one stops. It's a 4-way stop. Actually, when we have cars parked on the south side of Bell Avenue in front of the market, it slows the cars down instead of them just flying through there at 35 miles an hour without even any concern for what's coming the other direction. But, it's whatever you guys want to do. I definitely don't want to get denied and have to come back in 6 months. So I am open to the easiest solution.
We'll hear from the opposition. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Malloy Thorpe, and I'm an attorney with Miller Martin here in Chattanooga. I'm not here in a legal capacity. I live in the neighborhood. If you look on the map, I live north on Spears Avenue, 3 houses up from the store. And we are frequent customers of Mark. We love Mark. We enjoy the store. My husband is the president of the neighborhood association. I'm the secretary, so I'm here in that capacity because he was out of town. So I got suckered into sitting here for 3 hours. I'll send you guys my bill later. That's right, 3.5. Thank you. Another 30 minutes of billable time, So this, I'm here on behalf of the neighborhood association. I don't personally oppose this. After Mark applied for the zoning change in late January, we did ask that he speak about it at our February meeting. He attended that, and it was raised, albeit briefly, because there was other earlier business on the agenda, so we weren't able to discuss it in detail. At our March meeting a week ago, we devoted a substantial amount of time to that issue, but Mr. Hopkins wasn't able to attend that meeting. Councilman Chip Henderson was at that meeting and participated in the discussion, and there was numerous concerns raised. It was probably one of our highest attended meetings of all time. People are concerned about this because not so much what Mark would do, because we do like his store, we like his cooking. I don't know if y'all have been there. Best biscuit in town. Great craft beer selection. It really does bring a lot of benefit to the neighborhood, what he's done with the store, and we want to support him and we want him to succeed. We don't want him to go out of business. But what we are concerned about is who comes next. Like I don't believe is the current owner of the property. If the property is sold and a developer purchases it, it sounds like from what we've been told that, the zoning change is permanent, and whoever comes in could tear down this little store and build a 3-story building, potentially. Maybe it might only be a 2-story building or 2.5. I'm not really sure on the, there's some language in the staff report about it being near a protected location, and I'm not exactly sure what that protected location is. The church location is abandoned. There is another church that's not officially church, in that what staff showed you is the one, or R1 right on the corner, that's being used by a group of religious folks. I think unofficially, I don't know if that counts as a church. I'm a labor employment lawyer. But what we are concerned about is what happens in the future. Is this going to turn into a 3-story bar? Is this going to be open until 2 a.m. with, people being loud and drinking and, the problems? Like, we don't want the Big Chill to move 6 blocks closer to our house. We like the Big Chill where it is. And we like Mark's store. And I don't think that Mark would do that, but we don't know what will happen in the future. And so we're concerned about that. And we inquired of Councilman Henderson what conditions could be put in place. And he advised that that was something that we should talk with Mr. Ledford about, perhaps, or you all, to give us more guidance on what we could do to allow Mark to have this potential change while still protecting the neighborhood's interests. Some folks in the neighborhood are dead set against it. They're dead set against the form-based code change. We have not put it to a vote to see what the ultimate outcome would be. Had we put it to a vote at last week's meeting, it seemed like it was going to be opposed as a whole. But I think with the conditions, folks may be more amenable to it. Other folks have tried to come in and request form-based zoning within the neighborhood. And it's been regularly opposed to prevent that creep from coming in. And Councilman Henderson advised us that, if we grant this one, that it makes it harder to not grant the next one. And so that's why we really want these conditions, to protect the interest, and we want to figure out what those are. And so we submitted a letter to Mr. Ledford from the Neighborhood Association requesting that 30-day deferral. And that's where we're at. So if you guys have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? You can come back up. Mark, you've got 2 minutes. You've got 2 minutes.
Again, I guess we'll go with the deferral. I'd rather work it out with the neighbors than to have, any animosity. So let's do that. Go for a 30-day deferral, and can I be at the front of the list? Can I be?
Yeah,
case number
if it's
one?
deferred, it comes back up as old business, which will put you item 3 on the agenda, because
Do I
we've
get a
already
chit?
deferred
Okay,
to.
thank you. That's
So you do move up. But Mr. Farmer,
Yeah, let me do you maybe even one better than that. I'm for this, and I think the deferral probably makes some sense. I'd vote for it today. I've spent a bunch of time in your establishments over the years, and Fedora Evans, who owns this thing, is one of the sweetest ladies in Chattanooga. So I hope we can make this happen. What I'd like to do is I'll make a motion to defer, but what I'd like is for staff to work with the applicant and come up with some conditions that make sense, that we have the ability to vote for this next month. I know I'm making you uncomfortable, but but let's come up with can you suggest some conditions that will allow on-site alcohol sales with the zoning?
I'm looking at Dave. No, I don't know, because we don't really know what the neighborhood's concerns are. I don't know. It's more than beer, it sounds like.
This is me on the planning commission asking you, staff. Could you suggest some conditions that are appropriate for on-site alcohol sales?
I'll let Dan.
Mr. Reuter.
We will absolutely do our best to work with the applicant in the neighborhood and try to resolve something and have it on the agenda next month.
So put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
We have a motion to defer for 30 days and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I will say that some of the concerns from the neighborhood, I mean, that is such a small parcel, and being on the corner, if that building ever got tore down with the new zone of CX3, nothing will get built back. I mean, it will be like 15 feet and 1 story tall because all the setbacks plus the parking requirements and the parking setbacks
Yeah,
and
but
the landscape
Protected
requirements.
zone as well is gonna hurt.
I mean, if anything, I would almost promise I've got 20 years of life left in me. At this rate, maybe 15. In my lifetime, if that gets rezoned to see ECX3, I promise you in my lifetime, it will not get torn down because it will not without a rezoning. They'll have to rezone it back to C2 to tear that building down because ECX3 is not going to allow that little corner to be redeveloped.
So Miss Fedora does own quite a few
Sure.
parcels. And so I think part of our concern is that when this one gets changed to form-based code, then that just makes it easier for the form-based code to spread to this. And she's been trying to sell it all.
Sure.
Y'all have probably all looked at this.
We've all had it under contract at some point.
Yeah.
It's not worth what she's asking
Yes,
for.
I know.
So-
Everyone's familiar with this piece.
Yeah.
The several parcels of property. So if she were to sell it to someone once we get this one piece changed to the form-based code, does that? It seems like it would make it easier to those little tiny houses to combine them all into one larger, taller building, and it would be a significant change from what it is, which we love what it is. right
Sure.
now.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for the commissioners. We had something, wasn't a market, it wasn't too dissimilar from this in St. Elmo with a small music venue just wanting to have beer sales. And, I know it's a bad word, but we use UGC with a bunch of conditions to make that condition work. And I feel like this is the same idea right here. And I know it's not ideal and I hesitate to even bring it up, but clearly we have a reputable business owner doing business that the neighborhood appreciates. It's in support of it. It's just scared of the future. St. Elmo's the same way. So I feel like we can find a compromise to make this work, but at least for now, until it becomes a bigger issue and somebody puts a bunch of parcels together and tries to redo it.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Mr. Chairman, and I have it put on the screen, the beer code section, it does exempt from the distance requirements UGC. I think the applicant did talk to codes enforcement. I think they just suggested form-based code because it's close proximity. But UGC would work. It would be exempt from the distance requirements. He's right. We did approve one 2 years ago, St. Elmo, for a very similar situation.
Well, so maybe the recommendation next month is for UGC with a host of conditions that address the concerns of the neighborhood. Moving on in the agenda, we've got some mandatory referrals here. Thank you, Gail, for being patient with us. It is deferred for 30 days. Mandatory referral 2022-0052. Is there any opposition present? We have a staff recommendation to approve. What's the will of the commission?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mandatory referral 2022-0053 has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. And it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mandatory referral 2022-0054. We have a staff recommendation to approve. Do we have any opposition present?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. And it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mandatory referral 2022-0055 has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. See what we can get done when we get rid of all the engineers and attorneys? Wait, you're still here. We've got 3 amendments and resolutions on our agenda. Item 34 is a resolution to amend the Hamilton County zoning regulations, Article 8, Administration Enforcement, Section 107, amendment to add adjacent property owner notification for rezoning and special permit requests. Is there any opposition? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a resolution to amend Chapter 38, City of Chattanooga zoning regulations, more specifically the UGC Urban General Commercial Zone. We have a motion to approve, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Schultz, jog my memory on what that one is.
That's the one Karen discussed at lunch that we were requested to make amendments to UGC on landscape and setback.
Gotcha. Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Then we have a resolution to amend Chapter 38, City of Chattanooga
That's-
zoning.
That's been removed from agenda.
Oh, gotcha. All right, we have time on the agenda for staff updates. Are there any?
I don't have any of this. Dan, or anybody else has anything?
We also have a time on the agenda for public comments on non-agenda items. Is there any? Can I get approval of the Planning Commission minutes from February 14th? I have a motion to approve, and I heard a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Yeah, I think so.